Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Cultivation Family, starting by taking a concubine and practicing the Sun and Moon Sutra. Chapter 1. Commit yourself to me tonight to protect your Jiao family. Good. It was cloudy and rainy all night, but when I woke up in the morning the wind was blowing and the clouds were soothing. He looked at the simple roof, turned to look at the white shoulders beside him, and felt the warmth coming from his arms. Am I traveling through time? A flood of memories came to mind. This place is located in the Nanhang Cultivation world. The scope of Qingshan sect. The Zhou immortal cultivation family. The original owner is a member of the younger generation of the Zhou family, named Zhou Daocheng. Tianqi Zhou family, a well-known immortal cultivating family in the surrounding area, has a strong man in the foundation building stage, nearly 10 ninth level Qi practitioners, and occupies the second level mid-level Tianqi mountain spirit vein, which has been passed down for more than 300 years. Zhou Daocheng, ranked 6th in the Zhou family's generation, has the 3 spiritual roots of metal, fire, and earth. He has average qualifications, but has excellent understanding and a calm mind. He has reached the 6th level of Qi refining at the age of only 21. As for the person lying next to him, he is Zhao Yunji from the Zhao family in Qingtai Mountain. The Zhao family in Qingtai Mountain is a small Qi refining family. The strongest one in the family is at the 9th level of Qi refining. Both the family background and overall strength are not on the same level as the Zhou family. However, more than 10 years ago, a piece of news was exposed about the Zhao family. In this Qi refining family, a talented girl with water and wood spiritual roots appeared, Zhao Yunji. In the world of cultivation, most people have useless spiritual roots and miscellaneous spiritual roots, and only a handful of people have cultivation talents. Among them, the 5 spiritual roots account for a large part. Even among the immortal cultivating families, most of them have 4 spiritual roots and 3 spiritual roots. The emergence of a genius with 2 spiritual roots in a small Qi refining family is indeed a major event worthy of celebration by the whole family. However, the Zhao family made major mistakes in decision-making. They did not choose to hide their capabilities and bide their time, but accidentally leaked the news. Not only was there no clarification in the follow-up, but he hoped to use this genius to gain more benefits for the family. However, a talented girl with water and wood spiritual roots, and born into a weak Qi refining family, is not a huge temptation. Soon, it attracted the covetous attention of many foundation-building families, especially the Ma family of Hongfeng Lake. The year after the story broke, the Ma family came to visit with a large amount of resources, trying to force their young patriarch, Ma Xinyuan, to marry the Zhao family genius who had just grown up. Ma Xinyuan, the son of the head of the Ma family, is gifted with 3 spiritual roots. He is a playboy with a lustful nature and specializes in the affairs of men and women. It is said that at the place where he practiced, he built a special courtyard specifically for girls, and even forcibly persecuted many casual cultivators and women from small families. However, due to the strength of the Ma family and Ma Xinyuan's identity, the victim dared not speak out. A few years ago, Ma Xinyuan forcibly abducted a girl from a small family, forced her to have love with her, and tortured her for many days. After the woman's family learned about it, they came to ask for an explanation. The head of the Ma family used his power to suppress others, forcibly confusing right and wrong, and even injured the head of the Han family. In the end, he could only swallow his anger and marry the humiliated clan girl to Ma Xinyuan as his concubine. The Zhao family in Qingtai Mountain was aware of the bad reputation of the Ma family, so they naturally did not want to marry Zhao Yunji to Ma Xinyuan. The patriarch repeatedly refused. Unexpectedly, he angered the Ma family. After brutally injuring the head of the Zhao family, he officially declared war on the Zhao family. It was ordered that if Zhao Yunji was not married to Ma Xinyuan, the Zhao family in Qingtai Mountain would be destroyed. Later, relying on the influence of the Jiji family, they pursued and intercepted all the Zhao family's properties, settlements, and shops in Qingtai Mountain, with the intention of exterminating them all. In just 6 years, the situation of the Zhao family, which was originally booming, suddenly plummeted. During this period, a large number of members of the clan died mysteriously. Although there is no evidence to prove that it was the Ma family, anyone with a discerning eye knew that it was the Ma family who posed a threat. Faced with the situation of family destruction and death, new and old grudges, the Zhao family was filled with grief and anger, but still refused to obey. In order to seek a chance of survival, he looked for help everywhere, but unfortunately he did not have the strength to offend the Ma family for no reason. Finally, they approached the Zhou family, who were also members of the Ji building family, and were willing to marry Zhao Yunji to the Zhou family as a concubine, with only one request, to protect the Zhao family in Qingtai Mountain. Naturally, the Zhou family had no reason to refuse such a good thing that came to their doorstep. On the one hand, the Zhou family and the Ma family are both foundation building families, and their strength is similar. They usually have constant friction. Let alone feud, their relationship is definitely not harmonious. On the other hand, Zhao Yunji has dual spiritual roots and is definitely a rare genius. Therefore, the two parties hit it off immediately and immediately finalized the deal. And it's just a concubine, no need to hold complicated wedding matters, it can be completed in a short time. As for the candidate, the Zhou family finally discussed and selected Zhou Daocheng, a man with average talent and a calm personality among the Dao generation. Yesterday was the first day that Zhao Yunji came to the Zhou family in Tianqi Mountain. In order to protect the family, she was humiliated and married into a concubine. Her status was naturally not high, so she was sent to Zhou Daocheng that night. The original owner was also rude. It's a pity that not long after the fun started, he died unexpectedly due to disordered aura in his body, and another soul had to take over the task. Zhou He rubbed his brows and was forced to accept his new identity. He looked at the woman beside him with a headache. He is only 21 years old, and Zhao Yunji is already 24. Although there is a 3-year age difference, strictly speaking, there is still a gap in seniority. Zhao Yunji's father, the head of the Zhao family, was the same generation as Grandpa Zhou Daocheng. Although their status was very different, the seniority was still there. It just happened that Zhao Yunji was younger among his peers, while Zhou Daocheng ranked 6th in the Taoist generation, so there was not much age difference. Oh, what the hell is this? It's really ridiculous. Zhou Daocheng rubbed his cheeks and felt the warmth under the quilt. He had an inexplicable and unreal feeling. Suddenly a voice as cold as a spring sounded, "You were never so sentimental last night." Zhao Yunji had already woken up. Looking back on everything that happened last night, he couldn't help but look a little lonely. Zhou Daocheng sighed and speculated, "It must be that my brain got hot and I couldn't control it." Zhao Yunji had a cold expression. He didn't have much affection for this boy from the Zhou family who was much younger than him, and their interactions were limited to the tenderness last night. However, due to the pressure of family survival, he had to use himself to seek a chance for the family to survive. It was the first time for both parties to experience a stormy night, so they naturally felt very tired. So he didn't continue to toss, but just stayed warm for a moment before Zhou Daocheng got out of the quilt. When I first arrived, although I already understood a lot of things through the memories in my mind, it was still full of strangeness. The strong lack of security also made him temporarily put aside his male and female affairs and choose to understand his own situation first. In the process of traveling through time, some inexplicable changes seemed to have happened to me. First of all, the most obvious thing is the mental power. Zhou Daocheng could clearly feel that when the two souls merged together, the mental power became several times stronger. Even the comprehension was greatly improved. The original owner's comprehension was not low, and after this change, it seemed to become even stronger. The originally obscure skills and spells can now be easily understood and even applied to other situations. In addition, after a night of struggle last night, Zhou Daocheng had a surprising discovery. His realm was magically broken through to the 7th level of qi refining. Although his strength had reached the peak of the 6th level of qi refining before, it was very difficult to break through to the late stage of qi refining. The bottleneck between the middle and late stages of qi refining often takes several years to hone, and it is a very difficult threshold in the qi refining stage. In the family, the 7th level of qi refining is also a huge watershed. Reaching the late stage of qi refining means being able to take on family responsibilities and stationed in some important positions, which belongs to the middle and high-level combat power. Now, among the younger generation of the Zhou family, except for the eldest brother Zhou Daobai, no one has broken through to the late stage of qi refining. And Zhou Daocheng is the second one. There was no sign of a breakthrough before, Why did the bottleneck suddenly break through overnight? Zhou Daocheng frowned slightly, a little puzzled. Could it also be caused by the soul crossing? But soon, he found that it was not the case. After searching for a while, he noticed an abnormality and took out a piece of ancient stone from his chest. The stone was engraved with complex and cumbersome patterns, which looked extremely mysterious. This was the item of the original owner, which was obtained a long time ago. It should be a jade slip of the practice method, which needs to be read with spiritual consciousness. But this jade slip is too old and can no longer be used. It was given to the elders in the clan to check before, and they said that it had lost its spirituality. It should be discarded, but Zhou Daocheng thought the stone was strange and never felt annoyed, so he kept it with him. However, yesterday, when he passed through, the stone was affected by the special energy and changed abnormally. On the surface of the stone, a layer of debris fell, and the lines became clearer and more spiritual. Now, Zhou Daocheng tried to probe into the divine consciousness again, and surprisingly found that he could view the content. Is this the inheritance jade slip? Zhou Daocheng exclaimed lightly, revealing a look of doubt. In this jade slip, a complete set of inheritance is recorded, which should come from a powerful cultivator. The inheritance is mainly divided into two parts, the inheritance of skills and formations. In terms of formations, there is a lot of basic knowledge about formations, as well as a large number of formation diagrams. There are formation diagrams from the first to the third level, not only complete in variety, but also very detailed and complete. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but recall the information about the cultivation skills. In the cultivation world, the cultivation skills are a very important part, which can assist cultivation and earn spirit stones, and often make the road to cultivation smoother. There are 4 common cultivation skills: alchemy, refining, talismans, and formations. There are also many niche skills, such as planting, breeding, puppets, beast control. Any of them is extremely rare. If you are not a powerful family, you can hardly obtain the benefits of cultivating immortals. This is also a symbol of a family's heritage and strength. The Tianqi Mountain Zhou family has been able to pass on to this day, and a large part of the reason is that it has a complete second-level refining inheritance. There are many refiners in the family, and they can earn a large amount of spiritual stones by selling magic tools every year. The clan leader is a second-level refiner who can make several second-level initial magic tools. Just forging 1 or 2 pieces a year can bring a lot of wealth. This shows the value of cultivating immortals. However, in front of him is a complete set of formation inheritance, and the quality has reached the peak of the 3rd level, far exceeding the family's refining inheritance. The value represented by it is beyond imagination. Even though Zhou Daocheng was determined, he still felt his breathing was heavy, and even the hand holding the stone slab couldn't help but tremble a little, and he made up his mind secretly. The matter of the formation inheritance must not be leaked. Otherwise, even the Zhou family can't protect me. This matter must not be leaked, no matter who can tell it, including the elders in the clan. After all, it is too important, the fewer people who know about it, the better. As for the inheritance of the skills, there are 2 sets in total. Or strictly speaking, it is 1 set of skills inheritance and 1 set of special secrets. The skills are Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong, which is of the 3rd grade upper grade, enough to practice to the peak of the late Purple Mansion. You should know that in the Zhou family, the best skills are only the 2nd grade upper grade, which can only be practiced to the peak of the late foundation building. A Purple Mansion skills is enough to create a Purple Mansion family, and its value is not small. Why is the place where the Zhou family is located called Qingshan area? It's because there are 3 Purple Mansion realm masters in Qingshan sect, and they have the Purple Mansion inheritance, so they can stand for 1,000 years. After carefully checking the characteristics of this skill, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but be shocked. This is an earth attribute technique, with heavy, long, and pure mana, which can warm the body and tendons, strengthen the toughness of the body, and make the body far stronger than the same level. At the same time, it can purify mana, increase the storage of spiritual energy, and recover faster. Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong focuses on defense. On the basis of sacrificing a certain offensive ability, it greatly improves defense and durability, which is extremely suitable for a protracted war. This technique has another most important feature: practicing to the extreme can increase lifespan to a certain extent. If you succeed in building the foundation, you can add 10 years to your lifespan. If you can reach the Purple Palace, you can add another 50 years to your lifespan. Once such a heaven-defying ability spreads to the market, it will inevitably set off a bloody storm. For cultivators, lifespan is the root of everything, and all efforts are for a longer lifespan. Just for this one effect, the value of this, Wutu Kun Yu Gong, even crushes many 4th-level exercises. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help swallowing his saliva. If you practice this technique, won't you become a stinky, hard, and long-lived old turtle? I have to find a time to change the technique. Zhou Daocheng made a decision in his heart without any hesitation. The 2nd level lower grade, Yuan Mai Ju, and the 3rd level upper grade, Wutu Kun Yu Gong, are not comparable at all. With excitement, Zhou Daocheng looked at the last set of secret techniques. After just a few glances, his expression became strange. Sun and Moon Sutra. It's a very grand name, but the content is extremely special. After studying it carefully, Zhou Daocheng speculated thoughtfully. This is a dual cultivation method. When yin and yang are combined, the secret method automatically operates, gathers the innate essence, and conceives the origin of all things, and can contain the innate purple energy. This secret method is of extremely high quality. Zhou Daocheng can't see through it at all. He only knows that it is an extremely advanced dual cultivation method. There is no need to actively practice it. Now Zhou Daocheng has mastered this secret method and has used it last night. The effects are mainly divided into 2 parts. First, when combining with a woman, running the secret method can help improve strength and even break through the realm. Zhou Daocheng then realized that he could successfully break through to the late stage of qi refining, most likely because of the effect of the secret method. The second effect is that in the process of running the secret method, due to the combination of yin and yang, a trace of innate purple gas with the power of creation will be bred. Zhou Daocheng carefully checked and found that there was indeed a very tiny wisp of purple gas in the dantian, which was not affected by his own spiritual energy and was extremely mysterious. According to the secret method, the innate purple gas is extremely creative and is an extremely precious treasure between heaven and earth. It can give spirituality to natural materials and treasures and improve their quality. Zhou Daocheng has not tried it yet, so he doesn't know much about it. However, the sun and moon meridians also have great limitations. First of all, the process of accumulating innate purple gas is very difficult. If the 2 parties combine for the first time, they will directly accumulate a strand of innate purple gas, just like this time. However, if they combine again in the future, the amount of innate purple gas born will be very weak, and it will take a long time to accumulate a strand again. Secondly, there are strict requirements for talent. Not every woman can successfully produce an innate purple qi when you combine with her for the first time. According to the secret method, if you want to produce innate purple qi when you combine with her for the first time next time, you must find a woman with higher talent than Zhao Yunji. After reading the information, Zhou Daocheng was stunned for a while, and was a little at a loss. This kind of secret method has a sense of impropriety, which is really against ethics and morality. Although the way of cultivating immortals pays attention to wealth, friends and land, everything goes too far. Once you fall into desire, it is an evil practice. After knowing the specialness of this secret method, Zhou Daocheng's first reaction was not excitement, but a palpitation. Then he immediately checked his thinking and mentality, and after confirming that there was no abnormality, he breathed a sigh of relief. If this secret method affects the mind, it will definitely not be used in the future. Even if there is no effect at all, you must be cautious to avoid going astray. I really didn't expect that I could get such a big gain from a small jade slip. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but sigh, but he was more vigilant. Especially when he thought of Zhao Yunji outside the practice room, he couldn't help but feel sad. If the 2 lived together, how could these secrets be hidden? Killing to silence them. Zhou Daocheng hurriedly shook his head and put aside this unrealistic idea, thinking that it was not necessary to do so for the time being. While he was thinking, the communication stone on his waist suddenly emitted a light. Grandfather asked me to go back to Tianqi Mountain. The information came from the head of the Zhou family, Zhou Chengyi, who was also Zhou Daocheng's great-grandfather. Zhou Daocheng had some guesses about why the head of the family wanted to find him. The Zhou family protected the Zhao family and asked him to marry Zhao Yunji as a concubine, which meant offending the Ma family. This matter was very serious. Although he was not the decision maker, as the protagonist of this matter, it was difficult to completely avoid it. Zhou Daocheng put away the jade slip and walked out of the practice room. Zhao Yunji was already dressed, her cold face was a little pale, and her appearance was a little haggard. The head of the family asked us to go over there. Zhou Daocheng said calmly. Zhao Yunji nodded slightly, combed her hair, followed Zhou Daocheng, and walked out of the wooden house. She was only 24 years old, still a girl, but she had lost some of her immaturity and had a more gentle and elegant temperament. Looking at the young man in front of her, Zhao Yunji had a complicated expression, unwilling, humiliated, resentful, helpless, resigned, all mixed together. Under pressure from the Ma family of Hongfang Lake, the Zhao family was like a candle in the wind and could no longer withstand any blows, so they resorted to this desperate measure and became the concubine of the Zhou family of Tianqi Mountain. But for Zhao Yunji, a proud daughter of heaven, a genius with 2 spiritual roots, who had been the center of attention since childhood, wasn't this another tragedy? Zhou Daocheng noticed Zhao Yunji's emotions, but didn't say much. It's useless to persuade many things. For the sake of family inheritance, there are too many things that have to be done. Which family doesn't have a family history that is worth singing and crying about? The Zhao family has it, and the Zhou family has it too. After packing up, Zhou Daocheng took Zhao Yunji back to Tianqi Mountain. Tianqi Mountain, meeting hall on the mountainside. Meet the great-grandfather. Zhou Daocheng pushed the door open and bowed respectfully. No need to be polite, sit down with Yunji. The old man on the first seat was reading the scroll in his hand, his voice was low and old, but steady and powerful. Zhou Daocheng was neither humble nor arrogant, and led Zhao Yunji to sit down at the side. The person in front of him was the current head of the Zhou family, the eldest of the Chong generation, and Zhou Daocheng's grandfather, and a peak powerhouse of the 9th level of qi refining. He is one of the most powerful people in the Zhou family now, except for the foundation building powerhouse. This time, the head of the family was responsible for protecting the Zhao family and marrying Zhao Yunji as a concubine for Zhou Daocheng. After a moment, Zhou Chengyi put down the scroll in his hand. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, and when he looked at Zhou Daocheng, a slight fluctuation suddenly appeared. Daocheng, have you made a breakthrough? Zhou Daocheng was shocked. He didn't expect that his great-grandfather could see through his strength with just one glance. Not daring to be negligent, Zhou Daocheng quickly responded. Yes, great-grandfather, I felt the bottleneck loosened a few days ago, and I successfully broke through to the 7th level of qi refining yesterday. Not bad. Zhou Chengyi nodded slightly, with a hint of approval in his eyes. The Zhou family's Dao generation is not gifted, with the highest being 3 spiritual roots, and no one with extraordinary talent or the prospect of breaking through the foundation. Zhou Daocheng, in this generation of the family, has performed well. He is calm and introverted, mature at a young age, and has always been the focus of the family's training. Zhou Chengyi asked a few more questions, all about the trivial matters of daily cultivation. Zhou Daocheng was sweating in his heart, but based on the memory in his mind, he was able to answer fluently without revealing any flaws. After speaking, Zhou Chengyi took a sip of tea, looked at Zhao Yunji below, and suddenly said, Zhao Yunji, the outer room has prepared some spiritual cakes and spiritual tea. Go and try if it suits your taste and take some back later. Zhao Yunji immediately understood when she heard it. Zhou Chengyi was sending her away because he had something private to talk about with Zhou Daocheng, so he left tactfully. When there were only 2 people left in the conference room, Zhou Chengyi looked at Zhou Daocheng, put away the smile on his face, and asked seriously, Daocheng, what do you think about this woman and the Zhao family's affairs? Zhou Daocheng's heart trembled, and after a moment of consideration, he answered seriously, of course I will follow the family's arrangements. I think the family elders must have thought deeply about making such a decision, so there is no need for Daocheng to worry too much. Zhou Chengyi frowned slightly, seeming a little dissatisfied with Zhou Daocheng's straightness. But he didn't give any warning, but said with a hint of ridicule, no need to worry about it. So you really don't care, I'm an innocent girl, and you were tormented that night. Did you have a good time last night? Zhou Daocheng looked embarrassed, and the hand that had just picked up the teacup stopped in midair. I didn't expect that my great-grandfather could even see this. But he couldn't express the pain in his heart. Does this have anything to do with me? I didn't even participate in the prelude, but it ended up being the climax. But I can't say that, after all, no matter what, my mouth was full of oil after eating last night, and I couldn't wipe it clean. Seeing the embarrassment on Zhou Daocheng's face, Zhou Chengyi did not criticize him harshly, but just reminded him lightly, the relationship between men and women is not the path to immortality. Remember, you must not forget to practice. Daocheng understands. Zhou Daocheng responded awkwardly. Zhou Chengyi took a sip of tea and said with a hint of approval in his eyes, but that's okay. This woman is gifted with dual spiritual roots and has excellent qualifications. She must be arrogant and arrogant. If you can win her as soon as possible, it will be good for you. Quote. But please remember that this girl is not really marrying you, and she needs to be carefully controlled in daily life. If she can help you on your path to immortality, it will be a good thing. If not, humph, don't worry too much. Zhou Daocheng broke into a cold sweat, secretly thinking that this was indeed the case. Within the immortal Cultivation family, they have blood as a bond, and they naturally share life and death with each other, without much intrigue. But when it comes to foreigners, they are ruthless and cruel, and everything is based on their own interests. Protecting the Zhao family is not out of kindness, but because it is beneficial to the Zhou family, nothing more. As for Zhao Yunji, he was just a victim of the Zhao family's strategic mistakes. Using one person's future to secure the family's peace was a sure profit deal. Zhou Chengyi's cold voice echoed in his ears, making Zhou Daocheng feel a chill in his heart. Although from his memory, he had long known that his great-grandfather was a ruthless and capable person who always focused on the interests of the family. But when he actually came into contact with it, he still felt deeply. According to the meaning of what I just said, Zhao Yunji's existence is to serve himself. If he cannot, he can completely abandon it. This shows how cruel this elder is. Daocheng knows it well. Zhou Daocheng responded seriously. Zhou Chengyi lectured a few more words, and finally seemed to remember something. He looked at Zhou Daocheng and said, Daocheng, are you interested in learning weapon refining from your second uncle? Zhou Daocheng thought for a moment and recalled the identity of his second uncle. Zhou Yonghan, a third-level foundation builder and a second-level low-level weapon refiner, is one of the true pillars of the Zhou family. In the past, Zhou Daocheng would naturally have wanted it, but now that he has a complete inheritance of weapon refining, he is naturally not interested in the second-level low-grade weapon refining skills. Grandpa, I learned the knowledge of weapon refining in my early years, but my talent is extremely poor. I guess I am not good at it. There was a hint of vague disappointment on his face, but Zhou Chengyi didn't say anything more and waved his hand casually. Forget it, the road to immortality is personal cultivation. The family can't help you much, you have to walk the road yourself. That's what Grandpa said. Go back. By the way, I will go back to my parents' house with Zhao Yunji in a while. Although we are concubines in name, we must not lose our etiquette. Zhou Daocheng nodded repeatedly, but after thinking for a moment, he suddenly raised his head and asked, Well, Grandpa, I have a question, I don't know whether to ask it or not. Zhou Chengyi frowned. A son of the Zhou family, why do you still need to hesitate? Just ask. Zhao Yunji's father is from the Zhao family and is of the same generation as my grandfather. In terms of seniority, are Zhao Yunji and I different generations? Hiss. Then how should I call the head of the Zhao family? Zhou Chengyi's expression froze, and he vaguely realized that he had overlooked something. He had known for a long time that Zhao Yunji was 3 years older than Zhou Daocheng, but he always thought he was a peer, so he never considered the issue of seniority. For the world of immortality, morality and ethics are very important and are the foundation of a family. It's only now that I think about it carefully that I realize there is a problem. Zhou Chengyi suddenly thought that when the head of the Zhao family came to ask for help, he seemed to want Zhao Yunji to marry a member of the Zhou family. The Zhou family has a total of 40 characters, which means the source of immortality will be more revitalized, the Zhan Yuan era will be everlasting, the Taoism will be bright and benevolent, the light will be on from ancient times to the present, the golden cauldron will be combined with the elixir, in the creation of longevity, nourishment will bind the heart, and the empty palace will be wise. Now it is Yang, Chang, Shou, and Dao. However, he only thought that the head of the Zhao family had lost his ambition. How could there be any reason for a young girl in her early 20s to marry a group of middle-aged people in their 40s and 50s? So, the person was finally selected as Zhou Daocheng. Looking back, the head of the Zhao family looked uncertain at that time, and Zhao Yunji's face was even more pale, full of humiliation and resentment. In the end, he struggled for several days and finally agreed under the pressure of the Ma family. If you think about it carefully, the Zhou family's behavior seems to be easily misunderstood. Forget it, you don't need to worry about this matter. Go back and practice hard. However, neither Zhou Chengyi nor Zhou Daocheng thought that the insult to the Zhao family would cause a lot of trouble in the future. End the conversation. Before Zhou Daocheng went back, he stopped by the General Affairs Hall to receive this month's salary and submit the tasks for last month. As a child of the Zhou family, you only need to complete some simple family tasks to receive spiritual stones and spiritual grains, which are considered family benefits. Zhou Daocheng's daily task is to plant a first-level low-grade spiritual grass, Wangya grass. Wangya grass is the main raw material for making first-level talisman paper. Although the family is not good at talismans, it can be traded to the Wang family of Guzhou Lake in exchange for some refining materials. Zhou Daocheng plants 1 acre of Wangya grass, 2 seasons a year, and needs to achieve 70% per acre yield to meet the basic requirements. The reward is 5 jin of first-level medium-grade spiritual grain, plus 5 low-grade spiritual stones. In the past year, Zhou Daocheng's harvest was good, reaching about 80%. In addition to the basic reward, he also received 2 family contribution points. 1 contribution value is equivalent to a spiritual stone. However, Zhou Daocheng does not plan to continue planting Wangya grass. Although this spiritual grass is easy to plant and easy to survive, the income is indeed not high. In the past few years, Zhou Daocheng has worked diligently every year, and has only saved a total of 52 low-grade spiritual stones and 10 family contribution points. Moreover, a large part of it was privately donated by his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan, who was the elder of the family. So this time, Zhou Daocheng did not accept the family mission, but planned to plant another more valuable spiritual grass, moonlight grass. Zhou Daocheng went to the market in his early years and accidentally bought a spiritual wine recipe called Moonlight Brew. This wine is of high quality, first-class medium grade, mainly made of moonlight grass, rich in spiritual power, and helps to speed up cultivation. If you plant moonlight grass, make your own wine, and then sell it to the family, your income will increase a lot in the future. Moonlight grass, a first-grade medium-grade spiritual grass, is much more expensive than the seeds of yellow bud grass, and cost Zhou Daocheng 3 low-grade spiritual stones. In addition, Zhou Daocheng gritted his teeth and spent a full 50 low-grade spiritual stones to buy a set of materials for setting up a spirit-gathering array. Among the first-grade low-grade arrays, the spirit-gathering array is the most widely applicable and the most helpful array for cultivation. It can greatly increase the concentration of spiritual energy within a certain range and is very suitable for use in the qi refining period. Although it is only a first-grade low-grade, it also has a great effect on the late stage of qi refining. If you want to find a formation master to set up a spirit gathering array in the cultivation world, at least 200 spiritual stones are required, not including the cost of materials. This is still unsaleable. After all, in the cultivation world, the number of formation masters is too rare, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is 1 in a billion. At least Zhou Daocheng has never heard of any family nearby that has a formation inheritance. On the contrary, there are many families that have the inheritance of talismans, alchemy, and refining, but the proportion is not large, and the skills of cultivating immortals are very precious. After taking the materials for the gathering spirit array and the seeds of the moon grass, Zhou Daocheng took Zhao Yunji back after confirming that they were correct. After returning to his residence, Zhou Daocheng breathed a sigh of relief. This strange world gave him a lot of pressure, and it was not until he returned to the familiar cottage that the pressure was relieved. By the way, he can also take a good look at his own yard. This place is hidden deep in the mountains, the location is extremely hidden, and almost no one comes and goes. Occasionally, there will be monsters, most of which are first-level inferior. The yard is surrounded by dense forests, with light clouds and mist, and the environment is very beautiful. The spiritual energy is not abundant, but it is not thin. The yard is not big, with a bedroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a practice room, a total of no more than 50 square meters. Outside the house is an acre of spiritual field that is specially irrigated. The quality is only the first grade lower grade. It was used to grow yellow bud grass before, but it is still abandoned. Next to the spiritual field, there are also several green bamboos planted. This kind of bamboo is the first grade middle grade green spiritual bamboo, a natural treasure with a probability of reaching the first grade upper grade. This is the highest quality material in Zhou Daocheng's hands, no one else. Although it has been carefully cared for, it has not grown well and has never reached the first grade upper grade, which is a big regret. Looking around again, this small courtyard in the deep mountains is indeed simple and comfortable, and the location is hidden, which is very suitable for seclusion and cultivation. Zhou Daocheng nodded secretly, and was very satisfied. But suddenly looking back, seeing Zhao Yunji behind him, he couldn't help but be more vigilant. "Miss Yunji, are you living with me too?" Zhao Yunji paused, his face froze, and he didn't know what to say for a while. I couldn't help but secretly guess the meaning behind this sentence. Humiliating me, or teasing me. Just as her face was gloomy and her thoughts were drifting away, Zhou Daocheng still said politely, "Miss Zhao Yunji, we are still young, and we should focus on cultivation. How about I build a separate courtyard for you in the back mountain?" Now he has too many secrets. The third level formation inheritance, the third level top grade skills, the secret method of the sun and moon, any of which will bring disaster to the Zhou family if leaked, so he has to be cautious. Letting Zhao Yunji live somewhere else is also to prevent her from snooping into his secrets. Zhao Yunji was a little surprised. "You don't want to leave me here?" She still remembers what happened last night. Zhou Daocheng didn't respect her at all. When he sent her to him that night, he didn't hesitate to sleep with her. Now, she has even accepted the humiliating fate she is about to face. Zhou Daocheng was stunned by the question, and looked back at Zhao Yunji up and down. He was indeed a little moved, so he calmly added, "If I need, I will come to you again." Zhou Daocheng was still very vigilant about Zhao Yunji. After all, Zhao Yunji's dual spiritual root talent has reached the peak of the 7th level of qi refining, and her strength is not weak at all. And I have just broken through the 7th level of qi refining. If a fight really breaks out, I will not be able to fight back. It was just Zhou Daocheng's unconscious words that made Zhao Yunji look a little ugly, but she didn't say anything, and walked silently to the back mountain. She also wanted to live separately. Now, the only thing that supports her standing here is her dual spiritual root talent. If she can successfully build a foundation, she will naturally be able to get rid of the current situation and don't have to be here. At that time, whether she returns to the Zhao family and becomes the ancestor of the Zhao family, or leaves alone and becomes a casual cultivator, it will be up to her. After all, no matter how powerful the Zhou family is, it is just a foundation-building family. They will never be willing to offend another foundation-building strongman, and there is a high probability that they will take the initiative to win him over. But breaking through to the foundation-building stage, how can it be an easy thing? The Zhao family is weak and cannot provide her with help. And the Zhou family could not provide a large amount of cultivation resources for her, an outsider, not to mention the extremely precious resource of foundation-building pills. Therefore, Zhao Yunji could only rely on her own efforts to break through. Even if she had the talent of dual spiritual roots, without the foundation-building pill, the probability of breaking through was no more than 10%. But this ethereal hope was the last sustenance in her heart. The two of them had their own thoughts, but they lived in peace. Zhou Daocheng returned to the yard. First, he planted the moon grass, and then irrigated and fertilized it according to the spiritual grass planting book. The planting of spiritual grass is not a simple matter, and it contains profound and complex knowledge. Otherwise, there would not be a profession like spiritual plant master. The higher the quality of the spiritual plant, the more careful it needs to be. If you are not careful, it will affect its activity, or even wither and die, resulting in huge losses. Fortunately, the cultivation of Yuehua grass is not complicated. Zhou Daocheng spent a lot of effort and finally arranged it all. After doing all this, Zhou Daocheng shifted his gaze and looked at the green spirit bamboo in the corner. He didn't have many resources. In addition to the spiritual grains for daily consumption, the only precious ones were the formula of Yuehua wine and the green spirit bamboo. The brewing of Yuehua wine needs to wait until the Yuehua grass matures before it can be gradually tried. And the green spirit bamboo in front of him, in Zhou Daocheng's eyes, may be much more valuable than Yuehua wine. Because in the array inheritance obtained, there is a set of arrays called green spirit sword array. The quality is as high as the first grade upper grade, the power is extremely terrible, and the main material happens to be the first grade upper grade green spirit bamboo. Generally speaking, the power of the array will be stronger than its quality. For example, the power of a low-grade first-level attack and killing formation will reach the level of a medium-grade first level, which is the level of the 4th or 5th level of Qi training. The power of a medium-grade first-level formation can reach the 7th or 8th level of practice. It is conceivable that the power of a high-grade first-level biling sword formation is absolutely extraordinary, and it is very likely to reach the 9th level of Qi training. This is equivalent to the strength of a family elder, and it often takes decades of training to barely reach this level. The 9th level of Qi training is enough to protect a region, or even to open up a Qi training family. Thinking of this, Zhou Daocheng felt his heart pounding, and he could not suppress his joy. He looked at the green bamboo with more and more cautious eyes. But the next moment, he seemed to feel a little regretful. Now the green bamboo has not yet fully matured, it is only the first grade middle grade, and it is still a long way to go to break through to the first grade upper grade. But the next moment, an item suddenly popped up in Zhou Daocheng's mind: the innate purple air. He suddenly recalled the role of the innate purple air. The innate purple air is extremely lucky, and it is an extremely precious treasure between heaven and earth. It can give spirituality to the treasures of heaven and earth and improve their quality. Although the introduction is extremely simple, Zhou Daocheng accurately captured 4 words: improve quality. Although I don't know what the improvement effect is, since the secret method is praised as magical, it must be impossible that it has no effect at all. Do you want to try it? Zhou Daocheng thought, but soon made a decision. No matter how precious the resources are, they can only play their effects after use, otherwise what is the difference between them and garbage? Moreover, if we only follow the introduction of the secret method but have never actually used it, how can we truly understand the effect of the innate purple qi? Without hesitation, Zhou Daocheng mobilized the mana in his body and slowly pulled the innate purple qi in the dantian out of his body. The innate purple qi is very fine, like a thin silk thread. If it were not for the faint purple color, it would be difficult to see with the naked eye. The breath it exudes is indeed extremely mysterious and unpredictable. It appears and disappears in the perception of the spiritual consciousness, and it is impossible to explore its essence. Zhou Daocheng looked solemn, carefully pulling the purple qi, slowly approaching the green bamboo, as if feeling the breath of the innate purple qi. The green bamboo trembled involuntarily, and the not-so-dense leaves made a rustling sound. Under Zhou Chengyi's nervous gaze, the purple breath sank into the green bamboo and disappeared completely. It's gone now. When Zhou Daocheng was wondering, he saw a strong green light emanating from the body of the biling bamboo in front of him, with a faint hint of purple light. The strong vitality instantly spread, and the breath that was exuded alone made Zhou Daocheng feel refreshed, and he felt that his meridians were being caressed by the breeze, which made him feel indescribably comfortable and relaxed. The biling bamboo in front of him underwent a transformation in a short period of time. The biling bamboo, which was only 3 feet high and as thick as a baby's arm, actually grew to more than 10 feet tall, and its diameter more than doubled. The originally sparse bamboo leaves also became dense, emerald green like jasper, and made a rustling sound in the breeze. The biggest change was the bamboo trunk of the biling bamboo, which turned into a deep green color, emitting a bright green light, and its texture became as smooth and warm as jasper. It seemed that this was not a bamboo, but a work of art carved entirely from beautiful jade, standing quietly in the courtyard. Around it, there was a rich spiritual energy, and the concentration of spiritual energy in the entire courtyard was increased by more than 50%. Looking at this scene, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help swallowing his saliva, and couldn't speak for a long time. He was extremely shocked by the changes in the green bamboo. Although he had never seen a first-grade top-grade green bamboo, Zhou Daocheng was sure that the green bamboo in front of him was definitely not an ordinary first-grade top-grade. He had never heard of a first-grade top-grade spiritual plant that could release such a rich spiritual energy. Under the transformation of the innate purple energy, this green bamboo seemed to have undergone a drastic change. At this time, the quality has completely reached the first grade top grade, even close to the second grade. What was even more surprising was that Zhou Daocheng accidentally looked at the ground and saw a cracked bulge, and a wisp of green tender leaves came out of the ground. Sweep away the soil and take a look. Bai Ling bamboo shoots. Zhou Daocheng's voice was full of joy, and he couldn't wait to come forward to check. Is this the effect of the innate purple qi? It really is the fortune of heaven and earth, It's impossible to describe his feelings at this time. Zhou Daocheng knew that he had picked up a treasure. Bai Ling bamboo shoots can only grow in places where there are a lot of Bai Ling bamboos. It is generally difficult to reproduce on its own in ordinary families. It is a blessing to be able to grow one or two plants. Unexpectedly, after all, with this Bai Ling bamboo shoots can be reproduced. Zhou Daocheng counted carefully and found that there were 6 bulges, which means that there were a full 6 Bai Ling bamboo shoots distributed in the surrounding soil. Under the influence of Bai Ling bamboo, the quality of the surrounding soil was also improved, from the first grade low quality to the first grade medium quality. In theory, the first grade high quality spiritual plants need to be planted in the first grade high quality soil. However, because the concentration of spiritual energy nearby is too low, it is difficult to reach the first-class upper grade without external influence. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but worry. If he wanted to maintain the normal growth of this green bamboo, he had to increase the soil concentration. But now he was short of money and had no resources to irrigate the spiritual field, so he could only make plans in the future. In addition, this green bamboo has been transformed by the innate purple qi, and it seems that it can no longer be called green bamboo. Zhou Daocheng decided to call it purple-green bamboo. Back in the practice room, Zhou Daocheng sat cross-legged to adjust his breath, restore his fluctuating emotions, and try to calm his thoughts as much as possible. Which one should I learn first, Wutu Kun Yu Gong, or the formation technique? Gongfa is the foundation of practice. A good practice method is enough to determine the lifelong practice path of a practitioner. Although Yuan Mai Ju is not bad, it is a world apart from Wutu Kun Yu Gong. If you change the technique as soon as possible and practice again, it will definitely be of great benefit. However, the formation skills are equally important. Without abundant resources to assist in practice, it is also difficult to go far. After some consideration, Zhou Daocheng decided to rebuild the technique first. The place for practice here is not absolutely hidden. Whether it is the family, grandfather Zhou Chengyuan, or Zhao Yunji, they all know that if there is suddenly an extra spirit gathering array here, it is really inexplicable. It is better to rebuild the technique first. It is important to improve your own strength. The technique is the foundation. Zhou Daocheng made up his mind and took out Wutu Kun Yu Gong from his arms. After studying the essence of the technique and ensuring that the technique is complete and can be practiced, Zhou Daocheng began to disperse his cultivation. Feeling the strength of the 7th level of qi training, slowly reduced to the 1st level of qi training, and finally became an ordinary person. As if something extremely important was lost, a strong sense of uneasiness enveloped his heart. Trying his best to calm down this feeling of uneasiness and calm down his fluctuating mood, he rested for an hour before starting to practice Wutu Kun Yu Gong again. Undoubtedly, the practice of Wutu Kun Yu Gong is more difficult and the content is more profound. However, Zhou Daocheng's comprehension is amazing. It took him a short time to understand the content of Wutu Kun Yu Gong, which greatly increased his practice speed. And there is another very important factor. After all, this is a recultivation. You only need to walk the path you have walked before. The original experience is still there, so there is no bottleneck. You only need to accumulate spiritual energy, so the speed will be much faster. For the next period of time, Zhou Daocheng was completely devoted to cultivation. Without sufficient strength, he really felt insecure. Everyday life is eating and practicing. Occasionally, he takes time to water the moon grass, which is comfortable and leisurely. On the first day, from an ordinary person with no cultivation, he practiced to the 1st level of qi refining again. It took a month to break through from the 1st level of qi refining to the 4th level of qi refining. At this time, the speed of cultivation slowed down significantly, and the spiritual valley had been eaten, and the speed of cultivation was reduced by about 50%. Zhou Daocheng had to sigh that wealth, friends, and land were indeed indispensable. The spiritual valley may seem inconspicuous, but every time you eat it before and after cultivation, it can greatly supplement the body's nutritional deficiencies, thereby improving the efficiency of cultivation. If you can use it all the time, it will be of great benefit to the body. It's a pity that the spiritual grains are few in number and expensive. 1 pound of first-grade medium-quality Wongli rice is worth 3 low-grade spiritual stones. Zhou Daocheng really can't afford it. In order to maintain the speed of cultivation, Zhou Daocheng left the practice room and chose to stay under the purple qi-green bamboo to practice, relying on the spiritual energy of this spiritual plant. In this way, the effect of cultivation is really good. After 6 months, Zhou Daocheng once again improved his strength and recovered to the peak of the 6th level of qi refining. Moreover, his strength is much stronger than before. The total amount of mana has more than doubled, and the unique Wu Earth spiritual energy is thick and long, as solid as a mountain, with extremely strong defense. The muscles and bones of the whole body have also become more condensed and solid under the nurturing of the Wu Earth spiritual energy. Just relying on the flesh, he has a good strength. In terms of comprehensive strength, even if facing himself at the 7th level of qi refining, he can be invincible. As for why it is said to be undefeated, not defeated. This is mainly because of the characteristics of Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong, extremely strong defense. Even if it can withstand the attack of the late stage of qi training, it is a pity that the offensive ability is seriously insufficient. However, Zhou Daocheng is already very satisfied. After all, there is no perfect method. If there is surplus, there must be deficiency. Now, standing in front of the bottleneck of the late stage of qi training again, Zhou Daocheng bowed his head and thought, with only one doubt in his mind. How did you break through this bottleneck of the late stage of qi training? Every bottleneck before has a clear memory, and it is not difficult to break through. However, the memory ends at the 6th level of qi training. After all, when breaking through to the 7th level of qi training, it was completely assisted by the Sun and Moon Sutra, and there was no experience at all. Zhou Daocheng tried many times, but still no effect. At this time, he also understood in his heart that it was not because of his lack of understanding, but because his cultivation speed was too fast. He cultivated to the 6th level of qi training in just 7 months. The mana has not been precipitated, and the breath is relatively empty, so the bottleneck will appear. Now there are only 2 choices. First, use time to hone, wait for the magic power to settle for a period of time, gradually solidify, and then naturally break through. Second, use the old method to break through. After thinking about it, Zhou Daocheng frowned, and couldn't help but secretly alert, how can I be lazy and neglectful when practicing? But then he thought, how can I be lazy and neglectful when using the secret method I got by my own ability to break through? Ridiculous. The moon is bright and the stars are sparse, and the shadows of the trees are swaying. In the back mountain, there is a monotonous courtyard, and the candlelight is peaceful and calm. Dong dong dong. Zhou Daocheng knocked on the wooden door. What's the matter? A clear voice sounded. Miss Zhao Yunji, I have some doubts in my practice, and I have been thinking for a long time but can't solve it. I wonder if you can ask the young lady to solve my doubts. Zhao Yunji frowned slightly, but still opened the door. She was wearing a thin plain dress for practice, her long hair was floating, and the quiet breath lingered around her. It is true that one cannot understand the path of cultivation by just thinking hard. Wealth, friends, methods and land are all indispensable, and mutual learning is inevitable. Please come in, Mr. Zhou. Zhou Daocheng showed joy on his face and walked forward quickly. With the help of Miss Zhao, this bottleneck will definitely be a piece of cake. Thank you in advance. Zhao Yunji's eyebrows were relaxed, her breath was like orchid, and her voice was a little softer. You and I have the same level of cultivation. Yunji dare not guarantee that she can solve Mr. Zhou's problem. Zhou Daocheng stepped in and waved his hand, saying, for Miss Zhao, this matter is just a piece of cake. Mr. Zhou, you are too kind. A quarter of an hour later. Heavy breathing sounds came from the room, intertwined with each other, sometimes long, sometimes rapid. The long candlelight swayed, dim and unclear under the moonlight. When the moon was at the top, the birds chirped across the night sky. The voice, which was still breathing, was heavy and nasal, but extremely cold. Is this what you call an unsolved doubt? Zhou Daocheng calmed down his breath and felt the powerful energy surging in his body. He felt refreshed and his meridians were opened up. Once again, he successfully broke through to the late stage of refining. Hearing Zhao Yunji's voice, Zhou Daocheng coughed lightly and touched his nose, but still said shamelessly, just as Miss Zhao said, money, friends, methods and land are indispensable. Friends also mean teachers. Thank you for your teaching this time. Zhou has gained a lot. Zhao Yunji took a deep breath and felt a blockage in her chest. She had the urge to slap the person in front of her. But she was still shocked when she felt Zhou Daocheng's breath after his breakthrough. Could it be that she really had this effect? She didn't expect that Zhou Daocheng actually broke through in the process and reached the late stage of qi refining in one fell swoop. The extremely heavy breath made her, a late 7th level qi refining expert, feel a huge pressure. Although the process was a bit tortuous and did not develop as expected, the goal seemed to have been achieved. Zhou Daocheng did succeed in breaking through, and all the doubts and problems he encountered were solved. Zhao Yunji recalled that the process seemed to be taking things out of the bag. Feeling happy, Zhou Daocheng returned to the courtyard where he lived while the sky was slightly bright. The weather in the mountains and forests was a little cool, shrouded in pale white mist, with faint bird calls, and a clear and quiet atmosphere everywhere. Zhou Daocheng was in a very good mood after successfully breaking through this time and reaching the late stage of qi refining again. Looking at his small courtyard, it looked clean and tidy, and a new batch of yuehua grass was planted in the spiritual field. In the past 7 months, the moon grass has been harvested once. Now, just 1 month after planting, new green shoots have emerged. The yield of 1 acre of moon grass can reach about 500 kilograms, but the quality of the spiritual field is only some inferior, so only a little over 300 kilograms were harvested in total. Zhou Daocheng left a part of it as seeds for the next wave of planting. As for the other moon grass, it was cleaned and stored uniformly. In recent days, Zhou Daocheng bought dozens of wine jars and other materials needed for wine making, and carefully studied the formula of moon wine. The formula of spiritual wine is very valuable. The formula not only includes the raw material ratio of spiritual wine, but also the manufacture of wine yeast and the detailed process of wine making. Among them, the manufacture of wine yeast is the most complicated. Although the process is relatively complicated, the recipe is detailed and all the steps that need attention are carefully marked, so the difficulty is reduced a lot. According to the steps in the recipe, Zhou Daocheng did not dare to make any changes, and tried his best to make every step meet the requirements. The quality of raw materials, water quality, temperature, humidity, and texture of the wine jar are all good. It took 3 days to brew more than 300 kilograms of yuehua grass, which filled 12 large wine jars. Although the quantity is large, after a series of fermentation and purification, the actual yuehua wine that can be brewed is actually only 1/10, which is about 30 kilograms. Almost half a jar. Zhou Daocheng has learned about the market price. 1 kilogram of first-level medium-grade spirit wine costs about 5 to 10 low-grade spirit stones. 30 kilograms of yuehua wine, the lowest price is about 150 low-grade spirit stones. In a year, yuehua grass can be harvested for 2 seasons, which means a total of 300 spirit stones can be earned. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but get excited. He didn't expect that the profit from yuehua brewing would be so great and more valuable than he thought. If he could add a few acres of spiritual fields, the profit from spiritual stones might be even higher. However, the matter of adding spiritual fields still needs to be considered in the long run. Just this 1 acre of first-grade lower-quality spiritual fields, Zhou Daocheng needs the support of his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan to barely irrigate it. If he relied on his own wealth, it would be beyond his ability. Let alone expanding the spiritual fields, Zhou Daocheng is having a headache with this 1 acre of spiritual fields now. Because the quality of the spiritual fields is only first-grade lower quality, while yuehua grass is a first-grade middle-quality spiritual plant. If it is planted in 1 or 2 waves, it is okay. Long-term planting will seriously affect the fertility of the spiritual fields. If it is not supplemented in time, it is likely that this acre of spiritual fields will be completely abandoned. The arrangement of the gathering spirit array still needs to be put on the agenda. After repeated thinking, Zhou Daocheng still placed his hope on the gathering spirit array. If there is a gathering spirit array, all the problems he faces can be solved. The spiritual field has sufficient spiritual energy to nourish it, so it can safely and boldly plant Yuehua grass, including the first-grade purple air-green bamboo, and the newly sprouted green bamboo shoots, which can also thrive. At the same time, his own cultivation speed can be improved, which is completely beneficial without any harm. If there is only one harm, it is that it is easy for others to discover the existence of the formation. But Zhou Daocheng clearly knows that he must make use of the formation as a cultivation technique, otherwise the probability of breaking through the foundation building period must be extremely slim. He hardly expects to get a foundation building pill from the family. The auction price of the foundation building pill is no less than 50,000 low-grade spirit stones. Even if the Zhou family exhausts all its strength, it is difficult to buy it. Taking a step back, even if the family buys it, it will be allocated to the foundation building seedlings in the family, and it is highly likely that it will not reach him. Zhou Daocheng can only accumulate spirit stones through his own efforts and try to accumulate 50,000 spirit stones before the age of 70. The most suitable age to break through the foundation is before the age of 70. Once you are over 70, your body functions begin to fail, and the spiritual energy in your meridians dissipates, making it difficult to break through. Now that you have the skills of formations, resources are no longer a problem. Among wealth, friends, and land, wealth comes first. As long as you have enough resources, even the poorest qualifications can force a foundation building period. So, Zhou Daocheng made a new plan for himself. The most important goal at present is to break through to the peak of the 9th level of qi refining as soon as possible. Conservatively estimated, with his own qualifications, plus the benefits brought by the formation, he can guarantee a breakthrough to the peak of the 9th level of qi refining before the age of 40. Next, there will be a full 30 years to prepare for the foundation. More than 30 days passed in a blink of an eye. Zhou Daocheng devoted himself to cultivation, slightly closed his eyes, and his breathing at the tip of his nose showed a certain rhythm. As he inhaled and exhaled, there were dots of earthy yellow light spots around him, and a layer of light yellow enveloped his body. As time passed, the yellow light spots poured into his body. Zhou Daocheng opened his eyes, and a gleam of light shot out of his eyes. Finally stabilized at the 7th level of qi refining. Zhou Daocheng exhaled lightly, and a smile appeared on his thin face. The speed of practicing, Wutu Kun Yu Gong, is not fast. It is mainly based on the accumulation of time, constantly compressing the mana in the body, making the mana more heavy and long-lasting. Compared with ordinary exercises, although the speed of absorbing spiritual energy is faster, the total amount of spiritual energy required to absorb by Wutu Kun Yu Gong is also more, so the speed of practice is only normal. Zhou Daocheng suddenly frowned, as if he sensed something, and looked outside the yard with a fixed gaze. Before seeing the person, a vigorous and powerful voice came in first. Ha ha ha, Daocheng grandson, the spiritual energy in your yard is much richer. Zhou Daocheng saw the person coming and instantly showed a surprised expression. Grandpa, are you back? The person's face was old and his hair was white, but his eyes were bright, and it was hard to hide the abundant spirit. This person is Zhou Daocheng's grandfather Zhou Chengyuan. Daocheng, have you practiced well during the time when Grandpa was away? Zhou Chengyuan was very satisfied with this grandson, but he still asked sternly. Zhou Chengyuan has 4 sons, but only one has spiritual roots, that is, Zhou Daocheng's second uncle. However, he only has 5 spiritual roots, and he practiced to the middle stage of qi training at the age of more than 50. Now he has been stuck in the 6th level of qi training for more than 10 years without any movement, and his immortal path is extremely slim. So all Zhou Chengyuan's hopes are placed on his grandson Zhou Daocheng. Seeing that Zhou Daocheng's magic power had improved a lot and had stabilized at the 7th level of qi training, Zhou Chengyuan couldn't help but stroke his beard and laughed happily, throwing a package over. Daocheng, you have an outstanding talent for cultivation, much better than your second uncle, and you are expected to build a foundation for immortality. Here are 5 caddies of green jade spiritual grain and 50 spirit stones. Remember to practice well and don't worry about the resources for cultivation. After taking the package, Zhou Daocheng was moved and said with a wry smile, "Grandpa, you don't have to worry about my cultivation resources. Just take it if I give it to you." Zhou Chengyuan blew his beard and glared at Zhou Daocheng. "Don't be complacent, how can it be easy to cultivate immortality? More cultivation resources, naturally more hope." Hearing this, Zhou Daocheng didn't say much and accepted 5 caddies of green jade spiritual grain, which is also a first-level medium-grade spiritual grain, and is of better quality than the Wangli rice distributed by the family. In the market, 1 caddy of green jade spiritual grain costs 5 low-grade spirit stones. Even Zhou Chengyuan, as a family elder, can't bear to eat it often. "Grandpa, please stay and have dinner with us today, so you can taste your grandson's cooking skills." Zhou Chengyuan waved his hand and said, "Grandpa just came to see you. After the ancestor worship is over today, I will return to Tiamu Mountain. The Chen family is eyeing us covetously, and only your 5th grandfather is guarding us. I am really worried." Zhou Daocheng also knew the importance of the matter and did not try to keep him. The importance of Tiamu Mountain to the Zhou family was no less than that of a foundation-building cultivator. Tiamu Mountain is extremely important to the Zhou family. There is a first-grade upper-grade spiritual vein on the mountain, where a large number of black ironwoods grow, ranging from first-grade lower grade to second-grade lower grade. The highest quality trees have reached the second-grade middle grade, which is an excellent material for refining. The Yang family started out by refining weapons, and they have a great demand for refining materials. For many years, the sale of magic tools has been the pillar industry of the family, and the annual income from the sale of magic tools accounts for 70% of the family's total income. And the materials needed for refining can be supported by Tiamu Mountain. It greatly reduces the burden on the family and does not need to purchase a large amount of materials from other families. Therefore, the family has always been very concerned about Tiamu Mountain, and a total of 2 elders have been sent to Tiamu Mountain all year round. They are the 3rd elder Zhou Chengyuan and the 5th elder Zhou Chenghai, both of whom are at the 9th level of qi refining and are the backbone of the family. Only occasionally return to the family at important moments such as ancestor worship. In Zhou Daocheng's impression, he rarely saw his grandfather since he was a child. After being reminded by Zhou Chengyuan, Zhou Daocheng calculated the time and found that it was almost the end of the year, and it was the annual family ancestor worship day. The so-called family ancestor worship is mainly to worship ancestors, settle accounts, look back on the past and look forward to a better future. It has been a tradition of the Zhou family for many years. "Hey, Daocheng, where is the girl from the Zhao family? Isn't she living with you?" Zhou Chengyuan suddenly looked into the house and did not see Zhao Yunji, so he asked with a little doubt. Zhou Daocheng accepted a Taoist partner, and Zhou Chengyuan must know it. Even without the nod of his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan, the head of the family Zhou Chengyi would not dare to make a decision for Zhou Daocheng without authorization. Zhou Daocheng was at a loss for words, so he made up a reason. "Miss Zhao and I are still young, and we should focus on cultivation at present, so Miss Zhao set up a small courtyard in the back mountain and lived separately from me on weekdays." "Not bad." Zhou Chengyuan patted his shoulder with satisfaction, and a trace of relief flashed in his eyes. "You have such a mind at a young age, and you will definitely achieve great things in the future." After a few simple conversations, Zhou Daocheng called Zhao Yunji and returned to Tianqi Mountain with Zhou Chengyuan to worship their ancestors. At noon, most of the Zhou family cultivators had returned to the Tianqi Mountain Ancestral Temple, and the ancestor Zhou Chengyi summarized the income and expenditure of the Zhou family this year. This year, the Zhou family's total income is more than 92,000 low-grade spirit stones, including the income from the sale of first-level magic tools, the income from the market shops, the income from hunting monsters, and the income from various garrisons. The total expenditure is more than 67,000 low-grade spirit stones, including the purchase of magic tool materials, elixirs, talismans, etc., as well as the salary of family members. In general, the net income this year is 25,000 low-grade spirit stones. Hearing this number, many elders of the older generation frowned and their faces became a little ugly. The 6th elder Zhou Chengguang couldn't help asking, "Brother, this income has increased a lot compared to last year, why is the net income reduced? Is there something wrong with this account?" Someone else echoed, Yes, uncle, in previous years, the family's expenditure was mostly below 50,000 spirit stones. Why is it as high as more than 67,000 this year? It is indeed much lower than in previous years. Quote. Family income and expenditure are the foundation of the family, so the slightly older members of the family are very concerned about these data. Although the net income of 25,000 spirit stones is not a small number, many people know that this is only a figure on the books, and it is difficult to save so much. After all, a large family needs to buy some expensive resources with the spirit stones accumulated at the end of the year. For example, it is necessary to purchase some second-level cultivation resources for Zhou Yonghan, the head of the Zhou family and the only foundation building expert. Or the purchase of some family businesses, such as shops in the market, also requires a lot of spirit stones. These expenses are indispensable and consume a lot. In the end, the spirit stones that can actually be accumulated may not even be 10,000 spirit stones. For a small foundation building family like the Zhou family, there is another most important thing that runs through the whole process, which requires the efforts of generations to complete: buying foundation building pills. If you want to maintain the identity of a foundation building family, the inheritance of foundation building cultivators cannot be broken, and you must ensure that there are foundation building experts sitting in Tianqi Mountain in every era. Therefore, every few decades, the family needs to raise a large amount of spirit stones to buy foundation building pills, which will almost consume all their savings. If you succeed in breaking through, it will be fine, and it can extend the life of the Zhou family for 100 years. If the breakthrough still fails after using the foundation building pill, then the efforts of decades will be in vain. Just like 10 years ago, the family purchased a foundation building pill, almost breaking their bones, trying to add another foundation building master to the Zhou family. Unfortunately, in the end, the second elder failed to break through due to an unstable foundation and a problem with his mentality, and decades of accumulation turned into clouds. This forced the Zhou family to tighten their belts and live for the next few decades. Many family elders have not received salaries for many years, and their strength is difficult to improve. This is not the worst case. If the Zhou family cannot produce another foundation building master before the death of the third uncle, it will lead to a gap in the foundation building period cultivators, and the Zhou family will change from a foundation building family to a qi training family. At that time, if you want to raise 50,000 low-grade spirit stones again with the income of the qi training family, it will not only take more than 10 years to complete, but it may take more than 30 years. Moreover, this is still a situation where the weather is good and there are spirit stones accumulated every year. If the family is hit or targeted by hostile forces, like the Zhao family, it is likely to fall into a situation where income is not enough to cover expenses. Therefore, whenever there is any fluctuation in the family income, the elders will be extremely vigilant. Facing the doubts of the crowd, Zhou Chengyi's face did not change, and his voice was calm. Quiet, this matter is about to be notified to everyone, just listen quietly. There are other important things to announce. Zhou Daocheng raised his head listlessly, and aroused interest. Zhou Daocheng really had no intention of asking about the previous high-sounding talks and the trivial matters of the family, so he had already wandered away. When the hunting team went out to hunt monsters, they accidentally discovered a lake with spiritual energy, in which there was a first-level middle-grade spiritual vein. After speaking, all the members of the Zhou family showed a happy expression, and their eyes all looked at the head of the family, and the silent atmosphere became active. A new station means brand new resources, which can bring more income to the family and provide more positions for the clan members. Zhou Chengyi continued, but it was not only our Zhou family's hunting team that discovered it, but also the people of the Mo Yunshan Qi family. I have discussed with them and used 5,000 low-grade spirit stones to obtain the ownership of this island in the lake. Mo Yunshan Qi family. The information of this family emerged in Zhou Daocheng's mind. This is also a foundation building family. There are 2 foundation building masters in the family, and their strength is slightly stronger than that of the Zhou family. Moreover, the Qi family also has the inheritance of immortal cultivation skills and is good at refining pills. The Zhou family and the Qi family are far apart, and there is no trading relationship or major conflicts. It can even be said that they are not familiar with each other. They are 2 families that live in peace. The other party is willing to give up the spirit vein this time because it is too far away from the base camp and it is really inconvenient to manage. After Zhou Chengyi finished speaking, there was a whisper from the audience. A first-level middle-grade spiritual vein. I didn't expect that my Zhou family would have another first-level spiritual vein. It's really the blessing of our ancestors. It's really a blessing for my Zhou family. With this first-level middle-grade spiritual vein, we can add more income to the family every year. It's just around the corner to buy the next foundation building pill. Quote. The most excited person was the second elder Zhou Chengping. Although the second elder was in the hunting team and was the first person to know the information, he was still so excited that he couldn't stop trembling when he heard it again. His old face was full of joy and he couldn't speak for a long time. At that time, he was the one in the family who had the most hope of breaking through the foundation building period, but in the end, because of his unstable mind, he failed, and the family's decades of accumulation were in vain. Although the clan members did not say anything, Zhou Chengping still felt guilty and could not get over it. He had never received a salary in these years and had been working diligently for the family, trying to repay the cost of the foundation building pill, so he almost dedicated his whole life to the family. An elder could not help but ask, "Brother, what is the terrain of this island in the lake like? What specialties can be produced?" Yes, have you ever conducted a field survey to see which spiritual plants are suitable for planting? Are there any natural treasures in the lake? The real benefits are what everyone cares about most. If there is only one spiritual vein without any resources, the value will be greatly reduced. Zhou Chengyi was serious and unsmiling. He said, "I have personally seen it. It is a large lake hidden in the undeveloped primitive mountains. There are 3 islands in the lake, with an area of about 15 to 18 acres. The terrain is flat and the soil is fertile, which is very suitable for growing spiritual grains and spiritual plants. There are also natural first-level lower-grade spiritual fields, about 30 acres, evenly distributed on the 3 islands, and 2 acres of first-level middle-grade spiritual fields." Everyone took a breath again, and their hearts couldn't help but thump thump thump. Just these 30 acres of naturally existing spiritual fields are already valuable, not to mention the 2 acres of first-level middle-grade spiritual fields, which are even more significant. But this is not the end. Zhou Chengyi continued to say, "There are no valuable spiritual plants on the island, but there are some other resources that may be used." Other resources? Oh, my big brother, don't keep me in suspense, hurry up and tell me. An old man urged impatiently. The old man was the 4th elder Zhou Chengyan, tall and burly, with a full beard, and he kept stroking his beard anxiously, almost balding it. Zhou Chengyi didn't tolerate it, glared at him fiercely, and said in a cold voice, "How can you shout and yell at the ancestral worship meeting? Chengyan, you are not young anymore, I will fine you 3 months' salary." The 4th elder Zhou Chengyan's face turned the color of pig liver, and he wanted to say something, but he didn't say it. He himself didn't expect that even if he became a family elder, he would still be punished by his eldest brother, and in front of many juniors, it was really a bit embarrassing. In the family, except for the clan leader Zhou Yonghan, the head of the family Zhou Chengyi is the most powerful person, and he is usually very strict and harsh to the clan members. Not only the juniors are afraid, but even other elders of the same generation have to be afraid in front of the head of the Zhou family. Seeing that everyone had quieted down, Zhou Chengyi continued to speak. "The 2 resources I mentioned are the feces of the blue-winged herons and the white-scaled perch in the lake. There are many blue-winged herons living in that area. In the wetland not far away, there is a large amount of blue-winged heron feces, which are extremely nutritious and suitable for replenishing the fertility of the spiritual field and extending the service life of the spiritual field. As for the white-scaled perch, it is a kind of fish that grows in that lake. The quality ranges from the 1st grade lower grade to the 1st grade upper grade. The meat is plump and tender, and it has rich spiritual energy, but the number is relatively rare. These 2 resources play a vital role in the development of the family. On the one hand, it can maintain the long-term development of the spiritual field. As long as the blue-winged herons do not fly away, it can continue to obtain benefits. However, when collecting feces, you need to guard against the blue-winged herons. Although the individual strength of this monster is not strong, it moves in groups. Ordinary cultivators have no way to deal with them. Once they are besieged, it will be very dangerous. On the other hand, the value of the white-scaled perch is also very high. Whether it is eaten by yourself or sold to other families, it can bring a considerable amount of income. The total value of all the benefits exceeded 5,000 spirit stones, so this deal was a win-win. Having said that, everyone had a general understanding of the new settlement. The question now needed to be considered was who should be sent there to station and manage. Zhou Yonghan, the strongest patriarch in the family, must be stationed in Tianqi Mountain to guard the family base. Among the 7 elders in the family, Zhou Chengyi served as the head of the Zhou family and the eldest elder, and he also needed to stay in Tianqi Mountain all year round. The other 6 elders, the 5th elder Zhou Chenghai and the 3rd elder Zhou Chengyuan, have been stationed in Tiamu Mountain for many years. The importance of Tiamu Mountain is self-evident and they must not be easily transferred. The 2nd elder Zhou Chengping needs to lead the family hunting team and is also an indispensable existence. The 4th elder Zhou Chengyan and the 6th elder Zhou Chengguang are stationed in the shops in Sifangfang City and Luwanfang City respectively, and they are also people who cannot be transferred. 6th elder Zhou Chengguang spoke up and said, "Brother, Luwan market is quite stable. How about transferring me there? It should be easier for me to watch over it in the early stages." Everyone nodded slightly. Luwan market is a large market opened by Qingshan sect. There are strong men from the Purple Mansion in charge. It will be relatively stable. Even if there are no strong men stationed, there will be no big problems. No need. Zhou Chengyi refused directly and said, "It's just a first-level middle-grade spiritual vein. You old guys don't need it. Stay in your position. I have other plans for this matter." Other plans? 6th elder Zhou Chengguang was a little confused and asked, "Are you going to let the Shou generation go?" Nowadays, the real pillars of the family are still the Chang generation. As long as they have good talents, most of them have reached the late stage of qi refining and hold important positions in various positions in the family. And the Shou generation has gradually grown up. The strongest Zhou Shorong has successfully broken through to the 9th level of qi refining and became the first Shou generation elder. Zhou Chengyan nodded slightly. It's not impossible to let the Shou generation do it. It's time to give these little fools some experience. Quote. Zhou Chengyi took a sip of tea and said, "What I mean is, let the Dao generation try. It's not a big problem. Although these kids are a little young, we old men are watching them. There won't be any problems." "No, what did you say? Let the Dao generation go." 4th elder Zhou Chengyan was about to agree, but he reacted immediately and raised his voice a few notches. The other clansmen below also looked at the head of the family in surprise, thinking they had heard it wrong. Chapter 11. Brother, I understand your desire to train the younger generation, but you have to consider the actual situation. How can those little fools of the Dao generation afford a family base? The 4th elder Zhou Chengyan said anxiously. The 2nd elder Zhou Chengping also nodded, and in a steady voice, he analyzed the pros and cons and said, "It is indeed too early. Among the younger generation, only Dao Bai has barely reached the late stage of qi refining, and I remember that he just broke through a few years ago. Without the old generation watching, with only a qi refining level 7 and a few qi refining level 6 kids, it is impossible to guard a first-level middle-grade spiritual vein. Since the failure of the breakthrough, the 2nd elder Zhou Chengping has been very low-key in the family. Apart from conscientiously hunting wild beasts, he almost no longer asks about other things. Today, he took the initiative to speak up because he was really worried that the head of the family would make a rash decision and bring bad influence to the family. Training the younger generation of the family is definitely something that every family attaches importance to. For example, in the Zhou family, when they reach the age of 20, they will be sent out to take charge of some family affairs. However, the tasks are generally simple and less dangerous, and even if there are mistakes, it will not affect the overall situation. However, a family residence with a first-level medium-grade spiritual vein involves many interests. It is natural that everyone is worried about leaving it in the hands of a group of children. Under the gaze of everyone, Zhou Chengyi just drank a sip of tea calmly. Who said that there is only one junior in the late stage of refining in the clan? Oh, is it possible that in addition to Daobai, there are other people who have broken through? An elder asked doubtfully. Zhou Chengyi did not say much, not only raised his head, but also looked at the unknown Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji in the crowd. Everyone followed his gaze and looked at the two of them. Zhou Daocheng instantly became the center of everyone's attention. He felt like a thorn in his back and couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Fortunately, Zhou Chengyi continued to speak. Daocheng has successfully broken through and is now in the late stage of Qi training. Although Yunji is not a member of our Zhou family, everyone knows her strength. It took Daobai longer to break through to the late stage of Qi training. Hearing Zhou Chengyi say this, the elders in the clan were also surprised and couldn't help but probe their spiritual senses to investigate. Hey, Daocheng has also broken through to the late stage of Qi training. When did this happen? Looking at his restrained and steady aura, it is obvious that he has stabilized and has not just broken through. Haha, Daocheng, this kid, I have seen him since he was a child. He has already broken through to the late stage of Qi training at the age of 21. This is more powerful than some double spiritual root geniuses. The fourth elder Zhou Chengyan grinned and looked at Zhou Daocheng with great satisfaction. It is really amazing. Zhou Daocheng has always been calm and mature. He has been focusing on cultivation since he was a child. It is not flattery. As a family elder who watched Zhou Daocheng grow up, these are all heartfelt words. In a small Zhou family, if there is a foundation building seed, it is a great thing, and it is worth the family to spend a lot of resources to buy foundation building pills. Even if there is no financial resources to buy a foundation building island, if you can reach the 9th level of Qi refining, you will at least be a family elder. After the joy, the topic returned to the arrangement of the station personnel. Although Zhou Daocheng's breakthrough brought a lot of surprises to everyone, it was still not enough for everyone to recognize the strength of several people. And more of them were puzzled. Brother, you should tell us your ideas. You are good at managing family affairs. But you have to tell us the reason, otherwise who can trust such a big stall to these children to guard it? Zhou Chengyi nodded, no longer kept it a secret, and said, family inheritance is the top priority. His voice was calm and powerful, as heavy as a mountain, making everyone quiet down. Since the Zhou family was passed down to this day, the two most powerful people in the family are the clan leader and the head of the family. The clan leader is the person with the highest cultivation in the family. He is the family's mainstay and the foundation of the foundation building inheritance. The head of the family also serves as the chief elder and manages all family affairs, including clan member management, station arrangements, income and expenditure transactions, etc. For these two positions, people are often screened as early as possible, that is, foundation building seeds and candidates for the head of the family. At this point, most people have understood in their hearts and are silent. Zhou Chengyi stroked his beard and said with emotion, I am over 80 years old, and my third uncle is over 130 years old. It's time to prepare for the future. Hearing this, everyone's face showed a solemnity, and the atmosphere became suppressed. These news are not top secret, most people in the clan know it, but they don't think about it normally. Now that it is suddenly mentioned, they suddenly realize that the clan leader and the head of the family are already old and are not far from the end of their lives, and they can't help but feel a layer of haze in their hearts. The second elder Zhou Chengping's face showed even more grief. If it was according to the original expectation, he should have broken through the foundation building period and succeeded the position of clan leader from the third uncle. But because of his failure, the family inheritance became precarious. Zhou Chengyi just sighed a little, then returned to a serious expression, and said in a powerful voice, so I plan to select a few good younger generations from the Dao generation to prepare for future inheritance. There are 4 candidates in total, Daobai, Daoqi, Daocheng, and Yunji. Daobai and Daocheng are both stable, considerate, and talented. Their realm has been stabilized at the 7th level of practice. In my opinion, they are both very good candidates. Daqi has excellent talent in the art of weapon refining. He has been taught by the clan leader since he was a child. Now he has reached the 1st level of high-grade weapon refiner and is proficient in merchants. He is also a good choice. Upon hearing the names of these 3 people, everyone nodded slightly. Zhou Daocheng also knows that among the Dao generation in the family, the eldest brother Zhou Daobai and the 4th brother Zhou Daoqi have always been the most valued juniors, and they are quite talented in cultivation and weapon refining respectively. Now that he has made a breakthrough, although his status has improved, he is still a little behind compared to the 2. But what Zhou Chengyi said next made everyone frown. There is also this girl Zhao Yunji. It is obvious to everyone that she has the talent of dual spirit roots. Her strength has reached the late stage of the 7th level of qi refining and is not far from the 8th level of qi refining. This is still under the situation that the Zhao family is short of resources. If there are resources, a breakthrough can be achieved. It's not difficult to be gay. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted. The head of the family, Dao Bai, Dao Qi and Dao Cheng are the three of us. Everyone has no objection, but Miss Zhao is not a member of my Zhou family after all. Do you? Zhou Chengyi's expression remained unchanged. Since you marry Dao Cheng, you are a member of my Zhou family. This, Zhou Chengyi didn't say much and just made arrangements for himself. I plan to let the four of them manage an industry respectively to see who is more capable. Finally, I will personally determine the foundation building seeds and family heads. Dao Bai, Dao Cheng, and Yunji will head to the new station. Each will occupy a small island and can choose their own development direction. I have asked someone to estimate that according to normal standards, the net income that a small island can bring in a year is about 1,000 spirit stones, but my requirement for you is 1,300 spirit stones. As for how to earn these spirit stones, it is something you need to consider yourself. My requirement is that you must hand in 1,300 low-grade spirit stones at the end of each year. If there are any extra, you can accumulate the remaining spirit stones, whether to buy resources for cultivation or continue to purchase industries, but I will make a comprehensive judgment on your abilities after 3 years. The same goes for you, Zhao Yunji. Although you are not a member of my Zhou family, I will also give you this opportunity, but the judging standard will be higher than that of others. I hope you are prepared. Zhao Yunji was not very excited, but thought about these words seriously, frowning slightly. Finally, there is Dodge. From now on, you will be responsible for managing the Zhou family's 100 equipment pavilion. The standard is also 1,300 spirit stones. After 3 years, you three will be comprehensively evaluated. When all the requirements were said, the clansmen stopped talking. Since the head of the family has arranged everything, it means that it is not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but has been carefully considered. Zhou Chengyi has been the head of the family for decades, and everyone knows his character. If he makes such a decision, it is definitely not something that others can easily change. And more importantly, when everyone carefully tasted Zhou Chengyi's arrangement, they found that it was not so difficult to accept. Especially on the point of Zhao Yunji, everyone was worried before whether Zhou Chengyi would really give her the foundation building quota. But after just listening to the rules, there was no such concern. First of all, the final comprehensive judgment is entirely determined by Zhou Chengyi's subjective consciousness. Could he really leave the Zhou family and choose an outsider? In essence, among these four people, Zhou Daocheng and Zhao Yunji are naturally at a disadvantage. Zhou Daobai, the eldest of the Dao generation, has the widest network of resources, and the 5th elder Zhou Chenghai is his grandfather, and the 7th elder Zhou Shorong is his uncle. The resources he has are far beyond the reach of others. Zhou Daoqi, the most talented weapon refiner of this generation in the family, this title alone is enough to bring him a huge advantage. For a family, letting a clan member with immortal cultivation skills break through the foundation building period will definitely bring greater value. After breaking through to the foundation building period, there is a high probability that he will become a second-level weapon refiner, and he will have a longer lifespan and can continue to bring a lot of wealth to the family. Therefore, Zhou Chengyi also had his own selfish motives in arranging Zhou Daoqi, arranging him in the shop in Sifang Market. The net income of Zhou's Beiki Pavilion in a year is definitely more than 1,300 spirit stones, and it is likely to be more than 1,500, and there is a lot of oil and water, and the income is very stable. There are also family elders who stay in the shop all year round to support. With their help, Zhou Daoqi naturally has a huge advantage and almost no possibility of losing. After thinking carefully and figuring it out, everyone already understood what the head of the family meant. Such an arrangement actually showed Zhou Chengyi's attitude. Zhou Daoqi and Zhou Daobai were actually the ones he preferred. Zhao Yunji was clear-headed. Although she knew that she didn't have much chance, she still accepted it calmly. For her, even if she couldn't get the chance to break through the foundation, this opportunity was of great significance. At least it gave her the opportunity to work hard and a way to obtain cultivation resources. As long as she developed well enough, she could accumulate a lot of resources. Thinking of this, Zhao Yunji suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but smile bitterly. This Zhou family patriarch's means are really amazing. Giving oneself an illusory hope not only makes oneself more identified with the Zhou family, but also makes oneself willing to make money for the Zhou family and hone other children in the family. It really kills 3 birds with 1 stone. The ancestor worship just ended. Zhou Daocheng received the official notice from the patriarch. Within 3 days, set off for Bailin Lake immediately. Bailin Lake is the name of this new settlement. It has been completely divided into one of the Zhou family settlements, and named Bailin Lake according to its specialty white-scaled perch. Looking at the notification letter in his hand, Zhou Daocheng felt that the world was unpredictable. He had just settled down for a short time, and he had to start running again. But on second thought, this matter has 100 benefits and no harm. Bailin Island is far away from Tianqi Mountain, about half a month's journey, and it is in the depths of uninhabited and undeveloped wilderness, and the location is more hidden. Full of security. At that time, just find a small island to settle down, whether it is planting purple air green spirit bamboo or arranging a gathering spirit formation to assist in cultivation, there is no need to worry about being discovered. As for the 4-person competition, others can't see through the head of the family, but he sees it clearly. No matter how hard he tries, he will definitely not get the chance to build the foundation. As for the position of the head of the family, looking at the head of the family working day and night and looking old before his time, you know this is not a good job. It's too late to hide, so how can you rush to work like a slave? When Zhou Daocheng was thinking, a smiling voice suddenly sounded, 6th brother, you will soon become a competitor. Do you have any plans? Let me steal them. Brother Daobai. Zhou Daocheng also smiled and shook his head helplessly. Brother, your method of stealing intelligence is to just ask directly. Ha ha ha, isn't it very clever? Zhou Daobai laughed heartily and put his arm around his shoulders affectionately, without any unfamiliarity at all. The Zhou family is a small family with only a few members, so the relationship between the younger generations is very close, almost like full brothers. Although it is a competition, where can we compete? They are all working hard for the family inheritance. The two chatted and laughed for a while, and Zhou Daobai suddenly became serious and asked, Daocheng, tell me honestly, do you also want to compete for the qualifications to build a foundation? Zhou Daocheng was stunned for a moment and replied, Brother, why did you say this? Zhou Daobai sighed and said helplessly, I'm just worried that fighting for a foundation building qualification will ruin the friendship between brothers. I don't know what the head of the family thinks, but, After hearing this, Zhou Daocheng smiled and comforted, Brother, don't worry, there is no suspense about who this foundation establishment pill will eventually belong to. How do I say this? As a weapon refiner, 4th brother's cultivation talent is as good as ours, so he must be the most suitable candidate. I guess this is also what the family elders mean. Hearing what Zhou Daocheng said, Zhou Daocheng did not show any doubts. Instead, he breathed a long sigh of relief and said with a smile. It turns out that you see it so clearly. It's useless for me to worry about it, brother. But don't be discouraged. Although there is no hope for the foundation establishment pill, you will be the head of the family. Brother Daobai will personally assist you, and you will definitely be able to develop the family, grow. Hearing what Zhou Daobai said, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but feel a little moved in his heart. This is the friendship in the family, simple and pure. Zhou Daocheng quickly refused. Brother, please don't. Even if the foundation establishment pill is gone, you still want me to be the head of the family. Isn't this purely punishing me? I don't want to do such a thankless job. After possessing the formation inheritance, the Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong, and the daily menstruation, Zhou Daocheng no longer has any obsession with the number of foundation building pills in his family. With his ability, as long as he develops smoothly in the future, he can definitely accumulate spiritual stones and buy foundation building pills, but it will only be a matter of time. What are you talking about? While they were chatting, a chubby face stretched out, with round eyes. 4th brother, why are you here too? Seeing that you were having a private meeting, I came over to join in and see if I could spy on the information. Zhou Daocheng was speechless. Co-writing is a virtue. Snapped. Zhou Daobai was even more direct, and slapped Zhou Daoqi on the forehead. what kind of private meeting, do you know how to talk? Daocheng has a family, be careful that your brothers and sisters will beat you. Zhou Daoqi looked aggrieved and rubbed the back of his head with deep resentment. Brother, stop shooting, I still rely on my brain to refine weapons. Zhou Daobai glanced at him and said, speaking of weapon refining, I suddenly remembered that you still want to give me a first-class high-grade magic weapon. When do you plan to give it to me? Oh, it will take some time. The store has been very busy recently and I really don't have time to do personal work. Zhou Daoqi honestly said that although he was proficient in the ways of a merchant, his tact in the business world had not been brought to life. He was a simple and honest person in the clan and was very popular. You have to take care of your brother. Zhou Daobai did not rush him. He knew that the family shop had a heavy workload, and Zhou Daoqi, as a weapon refiner, must be very busy on weekdays. They could only chat for a few more words and discuss their cultivation experiences before they each returned to their residences. After all, the family leader's notice has been issued, and they must rush to the station as soon as possible without delay. Just returned to the yard. Zhou Daocheng saw his grandfather Zhou Chengyuan standing in the yard, looking at the purple spirit bamboo with cautious eyes. Seeing this scene, Zhou Daocheng secretly thought that it was not good. The purple spirit green bamboo was placed in the yard. Firstly, it was not covered by the formation, and secondly, it could not be transplanted casually. It was too conspicuous. Daocheng, this is Bai Lingju. Zhou Yonghan looked at the purple chi jade spirit bamboo and noticed that it was very unusual. The aura it revealed had reached the peak of the first-order high-grade bamboo, and was only one step away from the second-order heavenly material and earthly treasure. As an experienced family elder, he could vaguely notice that the green bamboo in front of him was very different from ordinary green bamboo. Seeing this situation, Zhou Daocheng knew that he couldn't hide it, so he made an excuse at random. Grandpa, this is the Bailing bamboo that I bought before, but it seems to have mutated. It broke through to the first level of top grade overnight, and its appearance it has become quite mysterious, but my grandson doesn't know much about Lingzi and doesn't know the reason. Zhou Chengyuan listened without doubting that he was there. He frowned slightly and thought for a moment before saying, it has indeed mutated. It is of better quality than the ordinary first-grade high-grade Bailing bamboo. It should be a trace of spirituality. Spirituality? What do you mean? Zhou Chengyuan stroked his beard. The treasures of heaven and earth grow in nature, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth, and soaking in the brilliance of the sun and moon. It is inevitable that they will be contaminated with a trace of spirituality, thus breaking through their original qualities and becoming powerful spiritual objects of heaven and earth. It seems that you are very lucky. In such an environment with thin spiritual energy, you can actually encounter a spiritual plant that breathes spiritual energy. It is really a great opportunity. Zhou Chengyuan couldn't help but lament that the chance of encountering such a thing was not even 1 in a billion, and in the end, his grandson happened to catch up with him. Zhou Chengyuan turned his head, put away the emotion on his face, and said quite cautiously, Daocheng, the quality of Bailing bamboo was not low in the first place. Now that it has become spiritual, the quality has improved to a higher level. It is a great treasure of heaven and earth. Remember not to leave it outside. Show yourself in front of others, so as not to attract people's attention. My grandson remembers it and must try to hide it as much as possible. Zhou Daocheng nodded obediently. If he couldn't hide it, he wouldn't even let his grandfather know, let alone other people. By the way, Grandpa, I plan to bring the Bailing bamboo with me to Balin Lake this time, but I'm worried that the roots will be damaged during the transplantation process. Transplanted to Balin Lake? Zhou Chengyuan thought for a while, nodded in approval. It's okay to take it with you. You will be stationed at Balin Lake for the next few years, and you rarely have time to come back. Take everything you need to bring with you. Well, as for the transplantation method, Grandpa doesn't know how to transplant spiritual plants, so it's better to try another method. With that said, Zhou Chengyuan took out a delicate and compact bag from his arms. Storage bag, Zhou Daocheng said in surprise. Hey, you kid is quite discerning, take it, it was originally prepared for you. He threw the storage bag over. Zhou Daocheng grabbed it excitedly. Although this was just a first-class low-grade storage bag with an interior size of only 5 feet square, 1 foot approximately equals 33.33 centimeters, the price was really not cheap. On the market, the cheapest first-level low-grade storage bag costs more than 100 low-grade spiritual stones. It is difficult for ordinary monks to afford it unless they are rich in assets. Even if Zhou Chengyuan, as the elder of the family, wants to buy a storage bag with his salary, it will take a lot of time to accumulate. Thank you, Grandpa. Zhou Daocheng thanked him excitedly. With the storage bag in the future, many things will be more convenient. It will be much easier to transplant Bailing bamboo next. Put the whole green bamboo, along with all the bamboo roots, bamboo shoots and soil, into the storage bag to prevent the roots from being destroyed. In addition to the green bamboo, Zhou Daocheng didn't need to carry much. He carried important things with him, such as the Array Inheritance and the Sun and Moon Sutra, and the spirit stones were also carried with him. The rest were only daily clothes and daily necessities, as well as dozens of jars of Yuehua wine, some of which were stuffed into the storage bag and some were carried with him. The Yuehua grass in the yard was not yet mature, so it was not very valuable and not very convenient to carry. I simply bought a pack of seeds and waited to go to Balin Island to plant it again. After doing all this, Zhao Yunji almost packed up, and the two quickly set off. The journey was very long, and he rented 2 swift horses from the family. After driving for more than half a month, he barely reached Balin Lake. There were many monsters on the road. Although they were all first level, they brought some trouble and reduced the speed of travel. Seeing the vast lake hidden in the mountains not far away, Zhou Daocheng finally showed a relaxed smile. I really didn't expect that in the endless wilderness and deep mountains, there is such a suitable lake spiritual vein hidden. My Zhou family is blessed. It is indeed a good place. If an ordinary small family finds it, it will definitely be able to develop. Zhao Yunji commented calmly with a cold expression. This place is hidden, and there are no powerful monsters around, nor powerful immortal cultivation families and forces. Various living resources are also very sufficient, enough to support the development of a qi refining family. Even if it is the Zhou family, owning this spiritual vein will increase their income in the future, and more importantly, deepen the family's foundation. Zhou Daocheng explored the surroundings and found that the 3 sides of Balin Lake were surrounded by mountains. Only the northern forest had a road leading to Balin Lake, which was the road the two took when they came. Outside the northern forest, near the west, there is a very large wetland with a large number of green-winged herons. On the shore of Balin Lake, there are 4 or 5 small boats, only the size of 2 or 3 people, with a small and neat Zhou engraved on the oars. When the head of the family came to check in advance, he brought a group of clansmen with him, but they were not cultivators but some mortals in the clan. Although Zhou Daocheng and the other 2 were asked to manage Balin Lake, it was impossible for them to do everything by themselves. Their main task was still cultivation, and at most they needed to control the development direction of the island. When the head of the family issued the task to the 3 people, he had already set the rules. If clansmen were needed to help, they could be hired at the market price. Among the 3, Zhao Yunji and Zhou Daobai asked for more than a dozen people for daily servants and simple tasks such as planting and harvesting. Only Zhou Daocheng did not ask for any help. After all, from the beginning, he used the excuse of coming to Balin Lake to try to find a place that was hidden enough to develop secretly. He had too many secrets to hide, whether it was the purple air green spirit bamboo, the Wutu Kun Yu Gong he practiced, or the Array Inheritance, they were not suitable for outsiders to know. Besides, he did not plan to plant too many crops. According to the requirements of the head of the family, 1,300 spirit stones need to be handed in every year, and he only needs to complete this indicator. Zhou Daocheng found a small boat, said goodbye to Zhao Yunji, and rode directly to the island in the distance. As early as when he was in Tianqi Mountain, the ownership of the 3 islands had been allocated. Zhou Daocheng chose the island with the worst conditions, the smallest area, the least number of spirit fields, and relatively poor resources, but the only advantage was that the location was relatively remote. The other 2 islands are in the central area of Balin Lake. Not only is the terrain very flat and vast, but the surrounding fishery resources are also very rich, and the overall quality is much higher. Only the island chosen by Zhou Daocheng is close to the southernmost part of Balin Lake, very close to the mountains on the edge, and the location is very remote. However, this also meets Zhou Daocheng's needs. For Zhou Daocheng's choice, both the head of the family and the eldest brother Zhou Daobai are 10,000 incomprehensible. Zhou Daobai privately approached him, wanting to run out of the richer central island, but Zhou Daocheng had a tough attitude and directly rejected this good intention. He really has no interest in competing for the foundation building quota and the position of the head of the family. In his opinion, the eldest brother Zhou Daobai is definitely the most suitable candidate for the family. He is kind, knows how to consider the overall situation when thinking about problems, and is also shrewd and cunning. He is excellent in all aspects, otherwise the elders of the family would not value him so much. As for himself, it is safer to hide behind and slowly improve his strength. Not long after, Zhou Daocheng rowed a boat to his own island. The surrounding environment is extremely beautiful. Not far away are towering mountains, which are reflected in the water, which is green and refreshing. The island is about 16 acres, which is not large in area, but the terrain is very flat. There are 8 acres of natural first-level low-grade spiritual fields, but there are no first-level medium-grade spiritual fields. The 3 islands together have a total of 30 acres of first-level low-grade spiritual fields and 2 acres of first-level medium-grade spiritual fields, but most of them are distributed on the other 2 islands. After walking around the island, I found that these 8 acres of spiritual fields are close together, concentrated on the north side of the island. This is mainly because the spiritual vein is in the center of the lake, which is the north side of the island. The shapes of these spiritual fields are not regular and cannot be used directly at present. They need to be adjusted manually before they can be cultivated normally. In the south of the island, there is a slightly raised hill with little undulations. It barely forms a relatively flat valley, which is just suitable for settling. After clearing the weeds and trees around, Zhou Daocheng kept everything simple and built a simple residence for cultivation, which only had a kitchen, bedroom, and cultivation room, as well as a cellar of considerable size for storing moon wine. Then the first thing he did was to quickly take out the purple air green bamboo, find a fertile soil near the cultivation room, and replant it. Because it was well protected and the quality of the purple air green bamboo itself was high, it was not damaged too much, but its breath was slightly weaker. After replanting, it will probably recover in no time. Next, Zhou Daocheng should consider the future development of the island. After all, earning 1,300 low-grade spirit stones a year is not an easy task. If you just plant the first-grade low-grade spirit valley, the annual income will certainly not be that high, and you may not even have a net income of 500 spirit stones. Zhou Daocheng thought about it and found that almost all first-grade low-grade spirit plants could not earn 1,300 spirit stones in a year. With a helpless sigh, he understood the master's idea. Since the goal of 1,300 a year was set, it meant that he could not follow the routine and had to find other ways to make money on the basis of planting spiritual plants. For example, he could process the spiritual plants again to increase their value and sell them for a higher profit. And Zhou Daocheng happened to have a valuable economic crop in his hands, Yuehua grass. If it can be planted in a first-grade medium-quality spiritual field, the yield of Yuehua grass per mu can reach 500 jin, and it can brew 50 jin of Yuehua wine, which is worth 250 low-grade spiritual stones. In 2 seasons a year, that 1 mu of spiritual field can produce 500 low-grade spiritual stones, and 8 mu is 4,000 spiritual stones, far exceeding the goal set by the head of the family. But the biggest problem now is that he doesn't have 8 mu of good quality first-grade medium-quality spiritual fields. In the final analysis, it is still necessary to solve the problem from the formation. If the spirit gathering formation is arranged, then everything is not a problem. Zhou Daocheng also sighed. The skills of cultivating immortals are really amazing, and the problems that ordinary cultivators can't solve with all their efforts can be easily solved in front of the formation master. After thinking about it, Zhou Daocheng no longer hesitated. The way to solve all problems is to start with the formation, especially the spirit gathering formation. After settling down, Zhou Daocheng officially began to learn the formation. The vast amount of knowledge and the complicated and tedious process, even though he had a high level of comprehension and his mental power far exceeded that of other cultivators, he still had a splitting headache. It took him 3 days to barely memorize all the key points of arranging the spirit gathering array. 7 days later, he arranged it for the first time. The materials for arranging the array had been purchased before when he was in the family, and it cost 50 low-grade spirit stones, which was not a small number. So during the refining process, Zhou Daocheng was as careful as possible, for fear that mistakes would destroy the entire set of array materials. During the first layout, the process went smoothly, but in the final finishing stage, due to the slight difference in orientation, the formation communication was not smooth, and all previous efforts were wasted. Some of the materials were slightly damaged, but the core materials were still intact and a second attempt was possible. After another 3 days of study, Zhou Daocheng kept every process and step in mind, and only after making sure that everything was foolproof, did he start his second attempt. With the experience of the first failure, I am more careful this time. We don't dare to be careless during the process, we try our best to ensure the position of every piece of material, and ensure that there are no slight gaps, and it has been inspected many times. Just setting up the formation took up a day and a night. Zhou Daocheng devoted himself wholeheartedly to it, his chest pressed against his back because of hunger, but the final result did not disappoint. In the early morning of the second day, the layout of this first-order low-grade spirit gathering array was finally completed. As the formation was activated, it just covered an acre of spiritual field. The invisible force absorbed the spiritual energy from all directions, forming a pale white mist that enveloped the surroundings, like a fairyland. After only a quarter of an hour, the spiritual energy within the formation range increased by more than 10%. 2 hours later, the increase in spiritual energy reached its maximum, rising by 2.5 levels. Under this concentration of spiritual energy, not only will the cultivation speed be much faster, but the rich spiritual energy will also warm and nourish the spiritual field, gradually nurturing it into a first-order mid-grade. The crops grown in the spiritual fields will also increase their growth speed to a certain extent with the blessing of rich spiritual energy. In addition, the spirit gathering array also has a hidden function. That is, the monsters living around will be attracted by the unusually rich spiritual energy and approach the area of the spirit gathering array. However, there are no powerful wild monsters around the island, so don't worry too much. Instead, there are many white-scaled bass in the lake. They might be attracted to them and bring a wave of wealth with them, which would be an unexpected surprise. Looking at the spirit gathering array, Zhou Daocheng was very satisfied. A set of spirit gathering array materials is worth 50 low-grade spirit stones, but the value it can create is far more than 50 spirit stones. No wonder the world of immortal cultivation has a high regard for the skills of cultivating immortals. It seems reasonable to attach such importance to it. However, Zhou Daocheng is still a little dissatisfied with his success rate. After all, the formation materials are very expensive. The first level low grade requires 50 spirit stones. If it is accidentally damaged, it will be really distressing. We need to practice more, try our best to increase the success rate in the early stage, and lay a solid foundation so that we can go further in the future. Zhou Daocheng secretly made up his mind. But he didn't know how many array mages would be stunned by his learning speed. The vast majority of formation masters, even with the guidance of a master, find it difficult to learn it in a short period of time, and it is even less possible for them to successfully set up a spirit gathering formation in just 2 attempts. Many people even need several years of continuous practice just to memorize the tedious steps in the formation arrangement process. Perhaps this is a natural gap in understanding. With the experience of setting up the spirit gathering formation for the first time, it will be easier to learn other formations in the future. However, if you want to continue to arrange more formations, you need to purchase formation materials. Bailin Lake is located deep in the mountains, its location is too remote, and it is too far away from Tianqi Mountain, so it is impossible to go back in a short time. Thinking about it, Zhou Daocheng took out a nearby map and after checking it carefully, he found that the closest city to Bailin Lake was Baihifeng City, which was almost half a month away. The journey is still too far, so I'd better practice for a while first and then think about other things after I settle down. Zhou Daocheng made arrangements in his mind. After planting all 8 acres of spiritual fields with moonflower grass, he entered the spiritual fields covered by the spirit gathering array to practice. Tianqi Mountain, the majestic family meeting hall. Brother, is the task you set for Daobai and the others too high? A full 1,300 low-grade spiritual stones. Is it very high? What do you think is appropriate? Zhou Chengyi looked at a stack of scrolls with a calm expression. I think 1,000 spirit stones is enough. It's pretty easy at Daoqi. After all, The shop has been run by the family for many years and the income is pretty stable. As long as nothing happens, it's not a problem to earn 1,700 to 1,900 spirit stones every year. But Dao Bai Daocheng there. As he spoke, fifth elder Zhou Chenghai suddenly lowered his voice and asked, Brother, I know you are optimistic about Dodge, but there is no need to deliberately suppress Daocheng and Dao Bai, right? Snort. There was a cold snort. Zhou Chengyi glanced sideways, and said coldly, as the elder of the family, do you have to gossip behind your back and affect the unity of the family? Zhou Chenghai was shocked. The big brother in front of him was much older than him. He had watched him grow up as a father and brother, and he was in awe of him. But this time, he did not flinch, but continued to frown. Brother, don't blame me for speaking harshly, but your behavior this time is indeed too biased. If you are optimistic about Dodge, directly give him the opportunity to build the foundation that is, there is no need to tease other juniors. If there is any resentment in my heart, I'm afraid. The owner of the family, Zhou Chengyi, interrupted directly and said, do you think the Dodger is my favorite? It's not just me, many elders in the family can see it. After all, brother, your actions are too obvious. Hearing this, Zhou Chengyi put down the thick scroll in his hand, raised his eyes to look at Zhou Chenghai, and said word by word, the ownership of the Zhou family's foundation building quota has indeed been determined, but the candidate has never been Dodger. If it's not Dodge, who is that? Dao Bai. Zhou Chengyi did not answer, but commented, Daochi is a good kid, with outstanding talent in refining weapons, and he is shrewd and smooth. Although he is a bit mercenary, he is also very ruthless. He is a good candidate to be a family head. That makes sense. Dao Bai has some ambition, is kind and generous, and has some scheming and means, but lacks some edge and likes to hide things. That makes sense. Dao Bai is too stable, but he is still not bad. Zhou Chenghai nodded in approval. Daocheng, this kid was not originally in my plan. His methods are not as good as Daochi's, and his character and talent are not as good as Dao Bai's. Except for his more stable personality, there is nothing too eye-catching. I just didn't expect. He suddenly broke through the late stage of qi refining. It seems that he has worked hard on weekdays. Indeed, Daocheng also works hard. Zhou Chengyi. What's wrong, big brother, why are you looking at me with squinting eyes? Zhou Chengyi slapped the back of the 5 old men's heads. You old thing thinks everyone is good, don't you have your own ideas? Fifth elder Zhou Chenghai's mouth twitched. Then who do you think is good, big brother? Zhou Chengyi pondered for a moment, his eyes became deep, and he said, Chenghai, there is no need to ask so clearly, you just need to know that the first person of the Dao generation has long been destined. Has long been destined. Zhou Chenghai was thoughtful, as if he had thought of something, and an inexplicable look appeared in his eyes. Brother, although I don't understand it very well, I believe you must have your own plan. But I still want to say that Daocheng is the least advantageous. Will he have a chance? Yes, and it has been given to him. Zhou Chengyi's eyes were deep, and there was a wave of excitement. Daocheng himself may not be enough, but if the girl of the Zhao family is willing to assist him sincerely, then it doesn't matter if this foundation building quota is given to him. After saying this, the 5th elder Zhou Chenghai was instantly enlightened and understood his eldest brother's idea. Whether it is Zhou Daocheng or Zhao Yunji, they are at an absolute disadvantage if they fight alone. But there is a way for them to win. That is, Zhao Yunji is willing to give up her own interests and help Zhou Daocheng to the end. Without this kind of ideological awareness, even if she is very talented, what use is there for the Zhou family? This may be the test that Zhou Chengyi is hiding in the dark. However, even if Zhou Chengyi thinks he has made every possible plan, he could not have imagined that this small test would open up the road to revival for the family for hundreds of years in the future. White Scale Lake. Zhou Daocheng was covered with earthy yellow magic power, and the milky white spiritual energy surrounded him, which was engulfed into his body, filled every meridian, and flowed lightly. The rich spiritual energy in the spirit gathering array was gradually transformed into Wu Earth spiritual power, like a compacted city wall, becoming heavier and thicker. Suddenly, Zhou Daocheng frowned slightly, slowly gathered the spiritual energy around him, and looked around in confusion. What's going on? There is something wrong with the spiritual energy around. Just when he was practicing, he could clearly sense that there was a rich spiritual energy underground, which spread under the influence of the spirit gathering array and slowly gathered around. This spiritual energy is very pure, but extremely weak, and ordinary cultivators can hardly detect it. If he was not the controller of the formation, and his mental power was also extremely strong, he would not have discovered it at all. After a careful feeling, Zhou Daocheng once again confirmed his idea that there was indeed pure spiritual energy fluctuating underground. He once again activated the Wutu Kun Yu Gong, and used the magic power of the earth attribute to explore in the direction where the spiritual energy came from underground. A quarter of an hour later, Zhou Daocheng stepped away and came to an inconspicuous location on the island, looking at the ground with deep eyes. Then, without saying a word, he took out a first-level low-grade magic weapon and began to dig on the ground. Under the sword light and shadow, the soil and rocks splashed, and soon a huge pit was dug out. After a slight perception, the pure spiritual energy that he felt before was indeed a bit richer. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but show joy. It's true. If his guess is correct, there may be a big harvest today. When the excavation depth reached 10 feet, there was no need to sense it. With the naked eye, one could see the pure spiritual energy, which turned into wisps of pale white mist floating in the soil. Such a rich and pure spiritual energy, almost reaching the first grade upper grade, right? Zhou Daocheng looked overjoyed and could not help but speed up his movements, and the magic weapon in his hand left a residual image. When the depth reached 25 feet, the soil underneath suddenly loosened and fell into the deep pit below. Zhou Daocheng saw this and jumped away quickly, using the magic weapon to cling to the cave wall next to him. He took out a first-grade lower-grade luminous stone and explored the inside. After confirming that there was no danger, he jumped in. With the light, it can be seen that this is an extremely deep underground cave, surrounded by a relatively solid soil layer, and a cavity of more than 30 square meters has been formed inside. As soon as he walked in, Zhou Daocheng could feel the extremely rich spiritual energy. Looking in the direction of the spiritual energy, he saw a clear spring eye 1 foot square, gurgling with liquid full of spiritual energy. This is a spiritual spring eye, Zhou Daocheng exclaimed, and after being stunned for a few seconds, surprise instantly climbed all over his face, and he walked forward quickly. Only then did he realize that this was not only an extremely precious spiritual spring eye, but also of the second level lower quality. The spring water flowing in it was all spiritual spring liquid of the second level, containing extremely rich spiritual energy and extremely pure. With Zhou Daocheng's cultivation, drinking a sip was enough to replenish all mana in a short time, which was better than the effect of elixirs, and there was no elixir poison. This was not the first time Zhou Daocheng had come into contact with a spiritual spring eye like this, so he knew its value very well. On Tianqi Mountain, there is a Tianqi with a diameter of dozens of feet. The spring water in it is full of spiritual energy. Almost all of the spiritual fields of the Zhou family are irrigated by the water of this Tianqi, so the ancestral land of the Zhou family is called Tianqi Mountain. However, Tianqi itself is not a spiritual spring. The real spiritual spring is in the mountain behind Tianqi. It is said that it is a first-grade top-grade spiritual spring several feet square. It continuously flows out rich spiritual springs and flows into the Tianqi in front. After being diluted by ordinary spring water, it forms the Tianqi that nurtures the Zhou family. For the entire Zhou family, the value of this spiritual spring is not inferior to that of a foundation-building strongman, and it is even more valuable. At this time, Zhou Daocheng looked at the second-grade spiritual spring in front of him, and his heart was excited beyond words. Although the quality of this spiritual spring is only the lower grade of the second level, which is not as good as the one on Tianqi Mountain, its value is definitely more than tens of thousands of spiritual stones. If it is sold to a cultivation family or other forces, the price will only be higher. For a qi refining family, once they have this spiritual spring, it is almost equivalent to opening the way to a foundation building family. It is no exaggeration to say that this spiritual spring in front of them is enough to breed a huge foundation building force. Zhou Daocheng's eyes flickered, calmed down the excitement in his heart, walked forward and looked at it carefully. After a closer look, he found that at the bottom of this spiritual spring, there was a small channel as thick as 2 fingers, which seemed to lead directly to the lake, transporting the rich spiritual liquid to the outside world. However, Zhou Daocheng overturned this idea after a second thought. If the spiritual liquid leads to the lake water, it will not form a spiritual vein, but merge with the lake water to form a pool of spiritual water similar to that in Tianqi. Since the spiritual vein has been formed, it means that the spiritual liquid flowing out must have flowed directly into the soil layer at the bottom of the lake, thus forming a tangible spiritual vein. The spiritual vein of Tianqi Mountain was also formed in this way. I really didn't expect that I chose the most remote island, but it turned out to be the source of this spiritual vein. Zhou Daocheng exclaimed excitedly, with both surprise and helplessness on his face. His own blessing was indeed amazing. In fact, not all spiritual veins are formed by spiritual springs. This is an extremely rare phenomenon, and the number of spiritual springs is more precious than imagined. Most spiritual veins, especially first-level spiritual veins, are formed by the accumulation and precipitation of rich spiritual energy in a natural environment. They are generally tangible but not condensed, and may be exhausted if used excessively. The same is true for most second-level spiritual veins, except that the gathered spiritual energy is more concentrated and of higher quality. Only a small number of spiritual veins have sources like spiritual springs. Any spiritual vein with a spiritual spring will have a value that will increase several times. Once it is leaked in the cultivation world, it will inevitably be fought over by various forces. And the third-level spiritual veins must have a source, which may be a spiritual spring or a spiritual stone vein. The situation is different, so the value also increases exponentially. Only a powerful purple mansion force like Qingshan sect can control it. For Zhou Daocheng, the second-level spiritual spring is already priceless, and the third-level spiritual stone vein is naturally unthinkable. However, looking at the spring in front of him, Zhou Daocheng fell into deep thought. This matter is very important, enough to enhance the family's foundation. Should I tell the family? After thinking again and again, Zhou Daocheng decided to hide it. The development of the family is important, but his own improvement is also indispensable. Moreover, although he is a member of the Zhou family, he has inherited Zhou Daocheng's memory and has a very deep affection for the family. But no matter what, his soul is finally traveling through time and space, and he thinks more about his own interests. So after considering for a while, Zhou Daocheng decided to use this spiritual spring as his secret cave for cultivation. Owning this spiritual spring is enough to provide him with a huge amount of wealth, help him improve his strength quickly, and then he can also give back to the family. After making the decision, Zhou Daocheng returned to the island and buried the traces of excavation to prevent outsiders from discovering the abnormality. Then, he demolished his original residence and moved to the entrance of the spiritual spring, hiding the cave entrance inside the house. Not only that, even in the house he built a secret door. If there is no special guidance, it is impossible to find this entrance and exit. In addition, it is necessary to replant the purple air green spirit bamboo that has just been planted. The spiritual energy on the island is too thin, only the first grade inferior, which is not enough to maintain the growth of the purple air green spirit bamboo. Transplanting to the vicinity of the spiritual spring will be of great benefit to future growth, and the newly grown green spirit bamboo shoots can also grow better. After doing all this, Zhou Daocheng returned to the underground cave and embedded the luminous stone in the soil above his head. The narrow space lit up and was not so dark and depressing. Sitting next to the spiritual spring, with the purple and green bamboo swaying slightly behind him, the quiet environment is very suitable for practicing with concentration, and the originally impetuous heart gradually calms down. As the Wu Tu Kun Yu Gong is running, the rich spiritual energy is swallowed into the body and transformed into condensed Wu Tu magic power, and the strength slowly increases. After only practicing for a quarter of an hour, Zhou Daocheng felt that his strength has improved a lot, which is equivalent to the effect of practicing for several hours at ordinary times. Feeling the improvement of strength, Zhou Daocheng closed his eyes and practiced, but he was thinking in his heart, according to this practice speed, it will only take about 3 months to successfully break through to the middle stage of the 7th level of qi refining. By then, my strength will increase greatly, and I will just go to Baihifang City to replenish some resources for practice. At present, he lacks a lot of resources. For example, to arrange the formation, a large amount of formation materials are needed, and some first-level low-grade and first-level middle-grade materials need to be prepared. For safety reasons, some concealment formations, defensive formations, and offensive formations need to be arranged to ensure the safety of this underground cave. In addition, some high-quality spiritual plant seeds should be purchased, preferably first-grade upper-quality spiritual plants, similar to the green spirit bamboo. After all, with the spiritual spring eye, high-quality spiritual fields are no longer a problem. It is completely possible to plant some first-grade upper-quality or even second-grade lower-quality spiritual plants in the underground cave to increase one's income. As for the 8 acres of spiritual fields on the island, Zhou Daocheng has also made new plans. First of all, if you want to improve the quality of the spiritual fields now, you don't need to use the gathering spirit formation anymore. You can directly use the spiritual spring water for irrigation, which is not only faster, but also better in quality. He plans to upgrade all 8 acres of spiritual fields to the first-grade middle quality, so that they can be used to plant first-grade middle quality spiritual plants in the future. 3 acres of them are planted with moon grass to make moon wine. 1 acre of Yuehua grass can generate 500 spiritual stones in a year, and 3 acres can generate 1,500 spiritual stones. Not only can it easily achieve the annual income target, but it can also generate 200 spiritual stones for personal use. As for the remaining 5 acres of spiritual fields, they can be used to grow other spiritual plants, such as spiritual grains and other resources needed for cultivation. As for the spirit gathering array, it can be moved to the underground cave to assist in daily cultivation. At the same time, it can make the spiritual energy in the cave more condensed, reduce the dispersion of spiritual energy, and further enhance the concentration of spiritual energy. With the effect of the spirit gathering array, the speed of absorbing spiritual energy is faster, and Zhou Daocheng also devotes himself to cultivation. Time flies, and 3 months have passed in a flash. Zhou Daocheng slowly converged the breath around him, and his breathing was extremely long. The Wu Earth spiritual energy condensed around him had a strong oppressive force. Middle stage of Qi refining level 7. What a fast speed. If you practice at this speed, it will only take about 2 years to break through to the 8th level of Qi refining. Of course, this is when the bottleneck is successfully broken through. If you are stuck at the peak of Qi refining level 7 and cannot break through, it will also waste a lot of time. However, if this situation really happens, perhaps the Sun and Moon Sutra can play a big role. Zhou Daocheng felt the strong power in his body and was quite satisfied. Although he only had the strength of the 7th level of Qi refining, with the high-quality Wu Earth mana of the Wu Earth Kun Yu Gong, even the 8th level of Qi refining could not break his defense. It's time to go to Baihifang City. There is still too little training resources, otherwise the strength can be improved. Zhou Daocheng sighed, stood up, and checked the situation in the underground cave. Under the faint luminous stone, the spiritual spring was still gurgling with spring water, and wisps of white spiritual energy were floating in the air, and were gathered by the gathering spirit array and confined within the scope of the cave. The purple spiritual bamboo was also growing vigorously, and its quality was slightly improved. The newly grown bamboo shoots were bigger, surrounded by a faint purple air, about the height of a palm. It won't take long for these green bamboo shoots to grow into green bamboo, and the bamboo forest will be completely expanded. After looking around, Zhou Daocheng muttered to himself, the area of this underground space is still a little small. When I come back, I can expand it and open up bedrooms, formation rooms, planting rooms, etc. However, at present, the most important task is to go to Baihifang City. Zhou Daocheng took out a small bottle, filled a bottle of spiritual spring from the spiritual spring, and stuffed it into the storage bag he carried with him. This kind of undiluted spiritual spring water with extremely rich spiritual energy is very valuable in the market. In addition to improving the speed of cultivation and irrigating high-quality spiritual fields, it can also be used in the process of alchemy and refining to slightly increase the success rate. Whenever it appears in the market, it will inevitably cause a rush to buy it. It is a natural treasure that is in short supply. Now Zhou Daocheng is short of money. If he really can't make ends meet, he has to rely on selling spiritual spring liquid to get spiritual stones. After collecting the spiritual spring liquid, Zhou Daocheng returned to the island along the passage. He first checked the Yuehua wine brewed earlier. After 3 months of precipitation, the wine aroma began to appear, but the quality was not yet at its best. However, Zhou Daocheng was not prepared to wait any longer and planned to sell it directly for spiritual stones. If the Yuehua wine can be exchanged for enough spiritual stones, it is better not to show the spiritual spring liquid as much as possible. Otherwise, it is too dangerous with my strength. If someone with ulterior motives targets me, I am afraid that I will be killed. Zhou Daocheng was secretly alert and had made a decision in his heart. Unless it is absolutely necessary, you must not show that you have spiritual spring water in front of everyone. After counting the 30 jars of Yuehua wine and putting them all in the storage bag, he rode away from the island. Half a month's journey passed in a flash. Because it was the first time to go there and I was not familiar with the route, I was delayed for a few days on the road and arrived at Baihifeng City for nearly 20 days. Zhou Daocheng came in a hurry, looking at the tall and simple bluestone city wall in front of him, with traces of historical erosion, as if it had come across a long time, solemn and prosperous. On the tall and majestic city gate, there were 4 heavy and gilded characters, Baihifeng City. After paying a spirit stone, Zhou Daocheng walked into the market, and saw shops lined up on both sides of the street, with all kinds of shops, tea houses, wine shops, pill shops, magic weapon pavilions, all compactly arranged together. The sound of discussion, hawking, shouting, was endless, showing the prosperity here everywhere. Zhou Daocheng adhered to the principle of being careful and low-key, walked cautiously on the street, and looked around at the shops here. The main purpose of this visit was to buy materials, but the premise of buying materials was to have spirit stones. So the most urgent thing was to sell Yuehua brewing and raise a sum of spirit stones first. There were many restaurants here, and there were a lot of people bustling and the atmosphere was hot and noisy, but this was not Zhou Daocheng's goal. Large restaurants like this, although they have a great demand for alcoholic beverages, are unlikely to purchase idle spiritual wines. They have special suppliers or can brew spiritual wines themselves. So Zhou Daocheng went straight to a grocery store. The store was not big and there were not many people, but the store looked very old, so it seemed that there were many stores. What do you need, sir? Do you need to buy cultivation resources or sell materials? The shopkeeper smiled and asked enthusiastically. Zhou Daocheng did not say much, and took out a small pot of Yuehua wine and handed it over. The other party understood, took the wine pot calmly, sniffed it carefully, and his expression changed slightly. First grade, middle grade spirit wine. The quality is pretty good, and the spiritual energy is also sufficient. Do you plan to sell it? Give me an estimate. Although this spirit wine is of good quality, the taste is not mellow enough. I think it has just been brewed. How about 1 caddy for 4 low-grade spirit stones? Zhou Daocheng frowned and snorted coldly. This price is too low. Even the most ordinary first-grade middle-grade spirit wine can be sold for 5 per caddy. A low-grade spirit stone, a high-quality one, can be sold for 10 spirit stones. Why is it that I only have 4 spirit stones? Quote. The old shopkeeper smiled and patiently explained. Young friend, you don't know that this kind of scattered spirit wine brewed at home is not easy to sell because of the small quantity and unknown materials, so the price is indeed lower. Zhou Daocheng's expression was slightly relieved. He also understood this situation. Spirit wine is like elixir. If it has a long history and comes from a big store with a reputation guarantee, it will naturally sell better. But if it is an elixir made by a small family, even the elixir formula is not clear, and there may be problems after taking it, so the price will naturally be lower. Zhou Daocheng thought for a while and said, if I supply this kind of spirit wine for a long time, and the quality will be better in the future, can we negotiate the price? Long-term supply. The old man pondered for a moment and asked, how much spirit wine do you have? How much can you provide every year in the future? I have 30 caddies now, and I can supply 300 caddies every year in the future. Zhou Daocheng was straightforward. 300 caddies was the amount he could guarantee, and he could even have some left for himself. 300 caddies. The old man was shocked and raised his voice slightly, as if he didn't expect Zhou Daocheng to provide such a large amount. Young friend, you are not joking. Of course. The old shopkeeper fell into deep thought again, and after a long time, he said, this time I will buy it at the price of 5 spirit stones per caddy. If you can really supply 300 caddies of spirit wine every year in the future, and the quality is better, I will buy it at a higher price. How about it? No problem. Zhou Daocheng knew that doing business should be viewed from a long-term perspective. There is no need to be too fussy in the early stage. Sustainable development is the key. After the two sides reached an agreement, Zhou Daocheng sold all 30 kilograms of Yuehua wine, and exchanged for a total of 150 low-grade spirit stones. Then, Zhou Daocheng went directly to the material shop. This time, he planned to buy 3 sets of array materials, namely the cloud array, the falling stone array, and the earth defense array. The quality of the 3 arrays is all first-level low-grade, providing the effects of concealment, attack, and defense respectively, and the effect is better when used together. Moreover, before leaving, he had calculated in advance that the price of materials for these 3 arrays is generally lower than that of the spirit gathering array, and only 120 low-grade spirit stones are needed in total. Although prices will fluctuate, the difference will not be very large. For safety reasons, Zhou Daocheng went to 3 material shops separately and purchased the required materials separately. In the end, he consumed 125 spirit stones, which was a little more than the budget, but still within an acceptable range. The remaining 25 spiritual stones can just be used to buy seeds. When Zhou Daocheng came to the spiritual plant seed shop, he looked at the dazzling array of seeds, which had many qualities and types, and different uses and values. He couldn't help but feel a little entangled. At present, he has many channels to earn spiritual stones. On the one hand, he can sell Yuehua wine, on the other hand, he can also sell some diluted spiritual spring liquid, and even after he is familiar with the formation, he can sell the formation plate. Therefore, when choosing spiritual plants, he doesn't need to consider the income of spiritual stones, but only needs to choose spiritual plants that can help improve his strength. After all, for now, the foundation of everything is still strength. If you can't build a foundation, your future prospects will inevitably be limited. After a careful selection, Zhou Daocheng set his sights on 3 kinds of seeds. The first one, Jingyuling Mi, is a first-grade upper-grade spiritual grain. It is crystal clear like jade and rich in extremely strong spiritual energy. If a cultivator in the Qi training period eats it for a long time, it can effectively improve the speed of cultivation. The second type is the earth essence grass, a first-grade, earth-attributed spiritual grass with a relatively rich earth-attributed energy, which can assist the cultivation speed of earth-attributed cultivators. If it grows in an area with rich spiritual energy, it may also bloom and bear fruit, and grow more precious earth essence fruits, which will be of great help to improve your strength in the future. The third type, the black patterned lotus. This is not a first-level seed, but a second-level medium-quality spiritual plant. Both its quality and value far exceed those of other spiritual plants, and it has many uses. After the black patterned lotus matures, its lotus petals are dried and ground into powder. Combined with other spices, it can be made into a second-level tranquilizing incense, which has the effect of calming the mind and calming the spirit. The black patterned lotus root is a high-quality alchemy material. It is used in several second-level alchemy recipes and is very expensive. Even if it is not sold, the black patterned lotus root is also a spiritual plant with a very high spiritual content. It is very helpful for the cultivation of water-attributed cultivators in the foundation building period. If it is taken by water-attributed cultivators in the Qi training period, it is very likely to directly break through the realm. Finally, there are black patterned lotus seeds, which are the most precious material of the black patterned lotus. It is not only the seeds of the black patterned lotus, but also an extremely expensive material. However, Zhou Daocheng is not clear about the specific function. It is also a surprise to be able to find the seeds of the black patterned lotus here. Logically speaking, such extremely precious seeds cannot be sold in seed shops. Once they appear, they will be snapped up immediately. But this black lotus seed is very special. Zhou Daocheng saw the abnormality in it with just one look. Senior, the vitality of this black lotus seed has been exhausted and it is almost completely dead. Why are you still selling it here? Upon hearing this, the shop owner was immediately unhappy. His originally kind face immediately became serious, and he said unhappily, "Just tell me whether this seed is completely dead." With only this little vitality left, the probability of germination is less than 1 in 10,000, right? The shop owner snorted coldly. Since there is still a trace of vitality, there must be a possibility of successful planting. Besides, if such a precious spiritual plant is really intact, do you think you can see it here? Zhou Daocheng also shook his head helplessly, thinking that he was still greedy. How can a bargain be so easy to be greedy? However, when he thought of owning the spiritual spring eye, Zhou Daocheng still couldn't help but be moved. If it is in a normal environment, this black pattern lotus seed can't germinate and mature, but if it is directly planted in the second-level spiritual spring, the probability of recovery should increase by several %. Thinking of this, Zhou Daocheng already had some ideas in his mind, but he didn't speak directly, but turned his attention to other seeds on the side. How much are the seeds of Jingyulingmi and Jingtu grass? Jingyulingmi seeds, 20 low-grade spiritual stones per bag. Jingtu grass seeds, 30 low-grade spiritual stones per bag. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but take a breath of cold air after hearing this. This price is really expensive. With the remaining spiritual stones, he can only buy a pack of Jingyulingmi seeds. After some bargaining, the shopkeeper still refused to give in, which made Zhou Daocheng a little helpless. In the end, both sides took a step back. Zhou Daocheng bought Jingyulingmi seeds with 20 spiritual stones, and added 5 low-grade spiritual stones to take the only black pattern lotus seed with weak vitality. The shopkeeper was selling this weak black lotus seed with a try-and-see attitude. If someone is really interested, he can make some money. If he can't sell it, he can just throw it away. After all, if there is a chance to grow black lotus, he would have grown it himself long ago, and it is definitely impossible to sell it. After using up all the spiritual stones on him, Zhou Daocheng did not stay any longer, and left Baihifeng Market directly and returned to Bailin Lake. After a month, there was not much change on the island. Of the 8 acres of spiritual fields, 3 acres have been planted with moon grass, which has grown well under the nurturing of the first-level middle-grade spiritual field, lush and full of vitality, and the yield has increased a lot compared to the previous planting in the first-level low-grade spiritual field. As for the remaining 5 acres of spiritual fields, no crops were planted, but with the rich spiritual energy, some weeds have grown. After Zhou Daocheng cleaned it up, he turned the soil again and watered it with a batch of diluted spiritual springs to maintain the concentration of spiritual energy in the spiritual field. He did not raise the quality of the spiritual field to the first grade upper grade. It was not that he could not do it, but it was too conspicuous to greatly improve the quality of the spiritual field in a short period of time. If it was 8 acres of first-grade middle-grade spiritual field, Zhou Daocheng had room for explanation last time. He could say that he bought the spiritual liquid to irrigate it, which was barely justifiable. But if there was 8 acres of first-grade upper-grade spiritual field, it would be really unreasonable. So, after raising the spiritual energy of the spiritual field to the peak of first-grade middle-grade, Zhou Daocheng carefully sowed the first-grade upper-grade crystal jade spiritual rice. Although the quality of this spiritual rice reached the first-grade upper-grade, it could barely grow in the first-grade middle-grade spiritual field, but the growth rate and yield would be slightly reduced. In theory, 1 packet of seeds can sow 1 acre of crystal jade spiritual rice. But because the quality of the spiritual field was not good enough, Zhou Daocheng scattered this packet of seeds in 5 acres of spiritual field to make up for the lack of quality of the spiritual field. However, if the diluted spiritual spring is often watered in the future to maintain the rich spiritual energy in the spiritual field, the crystal jade spiritual rice should also grow well, and the harvest will not be reduced too much. When the number of seeds increases in the future, we can continue to expand the scale of planting. As for the seeds of the black pattern lotus, Zhou Daocheng did not throw them directly into the spiritual spring, because the sudden change in the environment may cause the seeds to die directly. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng was more careful, scooped out a bowl of spiritual spring liquid with a stone bowl, and then extracted some nutrient solution full of vitality from the leaves of the green bamboo and added it to it. The spiritual spring only has rich spiritual energy, while the leaves of the green spiritual bamboo have relatively rich vitality, and the two work better together. Then, put the seeds in it and place them on a stone between the purple-green spiritual bamboo and the spiritual spring. After doing all this, Zhou Daocheng also breathed a sigh of relief. Do your best and leave it to fate. It depends on your own luck in the future. He has done everything he can. If he still can't make this seed germinate, then it can only be said that it is fate and he has no chance of this blessing. Next, Zhou Daocheng's life became simple and boring, and his daily life rhythm was fixed. In addition to daily practice, it is necessary to irrigate the spiritual field every day to maintain the concentration of spiritual energy in the spiritual field, and add spiritual springs to the black pattern lotus to check its growth. In addition, it is to continue to learn the content of the formation and try to arrange 3 formations. The arrangement of the cloud and mist formation is the simplest. Zhou Daocheng only took a few days to easily learn it and successfully arrange it. A faint mist shrouds the underground cave, adding a mysterious and ethereal atmosphere to this secret and quiet space. At the same time, the weak monsters in the surrounding soil and lake water will be blocked by the mist and cannot find this underground cave, which increases the safety here. The second formation to be arranged is the Earth Defense Formation. Although the difficulty is slightly increased, after all, after practicing the Wutu Kun Yu Gong, the control of the earth attribute is stronger and the understanding is more thorough, so it is easier to arrange. But at this time, Zhou Daocheng faced a new problem. That is, the underground cave is too narrow and there is not enough space to arrange the Earth Defense Formation. So Zhou Daocheng could only dig up the hard soil around, and expand several rooms outward without destroying the overall soil structure. These additional spaces can not only be used to arrange formations, but also to increase the daily living area. In the core area closest to the spiritual spring, Zhou Daocheng left it all to the purple air green spirit bamboo and black pattern lotus. The quality of these 2 spiritual plants is high enough and suitable for growing in an environment with high spiritual energy concentration. In the future, if you encounter other second-level spiritual plants, you can also plant them near the spiritual spring. The surrounding soil quality is very high. It is a natural spiritual field and can grow a lot of crops. Or some spiritual fish, spiritual clams, spiritual shrimps, etc. If they can be cultivated in the diluted spring water of the spiritual spring, they can also bring a considerable income. Or use it yourself, which is also very beneficial to the improvement of strength. At the edge of the underground cave of the spiritual spring, closest to the central area, Zhou Daocheng opened a practice room of about 20 square meters, with a concentration of spiritual energy at the peak of the first grade upper grade. If you practice directly next to the spiritual spring, the concentration of spiritual energy is as high as the second grade, which is too high for Zhou Daocheng to absorb. The concentration of spiritual energy of the first grade upper grade is also very rich, and it is absorbed faster, which is more beneficial to the improvement of strength. Therefore, practicing in this range is also the final choice of Zhou Daocheng after careful consideration, multiple tests and measurements. Next to the training room, several other types of rooms were added. For example, a warehouse for storing daily necessities and training resources, a small spiritual field for growing crops, a bedroom for rest, a cellar for brewing yuehua wine, a formation room for learning formations. Almost on the original basis, another circle of rooms was added around the underground cave space, expanding the overall area a lot. In this way, there is enough space to arrange the formation. As the Earth Defense Formation was arranged, the yellow spiritual energy emerged, slowly condensed under the power of the formation pattern, and distributed around the underground cave in a translucent state. Under normal circumstances, it is difficult to detect the existence of the formation. Only when outsiders enter this atmosphere will they be directly excluded by the Earth Defense Formation. The last falling rock formation is also a formation of Earth attribute, and Zhou Daocheng already has experience, so it is not very difficult to arrange it. When the 3 formations completely covered the underground cave, Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and a sense of security came naturally, and the heart that had been hanging for a long time was also put down. At the same time, the blessing of the 3 new formations not only enhances the safety of the underground cave, but also makes the spiritual energy more concentrated, so that the concentration of spiritual energy here is higher and not easy to be discovered by others. When Zhou Daocheng finished all this and was about to practice, the communication stone in his arms suddenly rang. "Hey, is the second grandfather here?" Zhou Daocheng's eyes moved, and he stood up and left the underground cave, returned to the island, and rode to Zhou Daobai's island. The second elder Zhou Chengping led the hunting team out hunting. He happened to pass by Balan Lake and came to check by the way. While letting the team rest, he also brought some family news that needed to be informed to the 3 people. This is actually normal. The communication stone has a range limit. It cannot be used beyond a certain range. Therefore, Zhou Daocheng and the other 2 have been unable to communicate with the family for a long time. If there is important information, it can only be conveyed through the second elder Zhou Changping. It happened that the second elder was hunting in the nearby area and occasionally passed by here, which was more convenient. Zhou Daocheng did not dare to delay and rowed a small boat to the island in the center of Bailin Lake. When they arrived, the second elders Zhou Changping and Zhao Yunji were already on the island. Second elder Zhou Daocheng greeted respectfully. Zhou Changping stroked his graying beard and smiled. Ha ha ha, Daocheng is here too. I haven't seen you three for a few months. It seems that you three are very busy. I see that crops have been planted on Yunji and Daobai Islands. It seems that everyone has their own ideas for future development. Zhou Daobai, Zhao Yunji, and Zhou Daocheng all scratched their heads and smiled. Although it was not a life and death competition, after all, they took on the task of the head of the family and were stationed in an important resident of the family. Naturally, they had to do their best to strive to earn more wealth for the family. So the three of them also tried their best. When sailing over, Zhou Daocheng had passed by Zhao Yunji's island and saw from a distance that several mulberry trees had been transplanted on it. With just a slight guess, he had guessed Zhao Yunji's idea. Zhao Yunji's Zhao family has a silkworm breeding technique, which can use silk to make a high-quality magic weapon. This kind of inner lining robe is thin and tough, not only comfortable to wear, but also has strong defensive power. It is well known in the market and is often in short supply. The Zhao family also relied on this technology to quickly become rich and stand out among the qi refining families in a short period of time. But later, the siege of the Ma family caused the Zhao family's business to plummet, so that the income dropped sharply. Now, Zhao Yunji can bring this technology to the Zhou family, which is definitely a pleasant surprise. At the same time, it can also be seen that Zhao Yunji is determined, which is to show his attitude to the Zhou family. If this technology can be used to harvest a large amount of spiritual stones for the Zhou family, Zhao Yunji's status in the Zhou family will also rise accordingly. For a family, such precious and unique technologies have extraordinary value and significance. It is definitely not easy for Zhao Yunji to take the initiative to take them out. It is even possible that this behavior will offend the Zhao family behind her and make her be stabbed in the back by the Zhao family. Zhou Daocheng believes that Zhou Changping, the second elder of the family, has a more thorough understanding of these principles, so he is so happy. As for his eldest brother Zhou Daobai, Zhou Daocheng saw when he landed on the island that the more than 10 acres of spiritual fields on the island had been irrigated into first-level medium-quality spiritual fields and planted with an unknown spiritual plant. Although it is not certain what kind of species it is, the value is beyond doubt and it will definitely not be too low. Zhou Daocheng couldn't help but sigh that if he hadn't found the spiritual spring eye and had no formation to assist, he would probably not be as good as the other few people. But now, the final result is unknown. At this time, after a few simple greetings, the second elder Zhou Changping also brought the topic back to the content of this time. You have been away for a few months, and you may not know much about the situation at home. Because of Yunji's incident, the Ma family has officially declared war on the Zhou family, and the action is not small. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.